We've got the commissioner on his way out. We've got the Dolphins set to pick.
Who you got?
The Lions are on the clock.
You going Sewell?
You guys are going Sewell?
You guys are missing
I'm going
it.
Waddle.
I'm going Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith.
Waddle.
Tua, it's just like Joe Burrow politic for Chase. Tua is going after one of his former teammates. I think it's going to be
With the
Jalen Waddle.
sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle,
I was finally
wide receiver, Alabama.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Fractured ankle October 24th on that opening kickoff return against Tennessee. Up until that point, he was a coast-to-coast touchdown maker. Think about his ability as a punt returner during his career. Phenomenal in that area. Drawing comparisons to Tyreek Hill for obvious reasons. Explosive, a game changer, a touchdown maker, who, as I said, do not underestimate what he will do on special teams as an elite punt returner.
Called it.
Often compared. Congratulations, Elle. She's
first
on
one.
the board, right?
She finally hit a free
meanwhile,
throw.
Bart is undefeated so far. He is rolling
I was
along.
wrong. I
No,
said
he was just
Sewell.
wrong. He
I
said
said
Sewell.
Oh, man.
Kevin, stop trying to give him. No.
all this all up.
No.
Don't be hating on the right
Waddle,
side.
by the way,
Strong side.
ran a 4.37 at one point, broke his ankle, still came back to play a little bit in the national title game. He brings that speed, and again, this is a chemistry thing.
I hope he burned that suit.
The suit is a little hideous. It is going to be one of those. He will regret it.
Yeah.
Looking back tomorrow. Mike T, when you see the relationship here, especially with these last two picks, how important is that for a quarterback who's already in the league and you can bring in a wide receiver? You see that with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and now we're going to see that with Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Those are two young quarterbacks with no off-season program. We don't know what's going to happen here with COVID. The thing that, in particular, about Jalen Waddle that I love was his toughness in that championship game against Ohio State. He's out there with one leg. He's already a top, well, in this case, 6th pick, and his play speed, I don't care what the time speed was, especially this year not knowing, he really has tremendous game-changing speed. He reminded me of Tyreek Hill, and I think it's a really interesting point, Kevin, that Tua with Waddle, Burrow with Chase, I don't think that's a coincidence.
I mean, you're listening to the NFL Draft on ESPN Radio with Elle Duncan, Kevin Nagandi, Mike Tannenbaum, Bart Scott, Ian Fitzsimmons. Did we just completely overvalue Penei Sewell? I mean, these are now two teams that we thought were going to take him that decided not to, because again, we're over here taking issue with the Bengals for not taking it. I mean, the Dolphins O-line's trash too,
Yeah,
right?
and they traded Flowers.
Right. So
Flowers was a turnstile.
This feels like, though, it's finally falling in the Lions' lap, right? They pick next. Like, the Lions have gone, if you look at their track record of wide receiver.
Yes.
Hey, finally, let's build in the trenches.
I don't know. Listen, the coach, Dan Campbell, Uncle TB knows him better than anybody. He wants to bite Achilles and kneecaps and patella tendons. But I don't know. How do you pass on another explosive playmaker? Devontae Smith, they got to replace Galladay, so it could be another run on their skill positions, undervaluing the offensive line.
I'll tell you this about just Dan Campbell and being the big, cannibalistic coach that he is, right? I think that he's going to go O-line. I mean, I think Sewell goes off the board right here because he wants to build from the inside out. He's that kind of coach. Mike, am I off here?
100%. And last year they gave up 24
I'm 100%
sacks.
off or correct?
You're 100% correct.
Okay.
They gave up 24 sacks last year. I would be shocked if this was not Penei Sewell. I've worked with Coach Campbell, and I just think this is absolutely, this sets the tone for what he wants his team to look like, to be like. So I would be surprised if this wasn't Sewell. They got to fortify this line.
Yeah.
They got to see what they have in Jared Goff. And I'm surprised that Sewell's still on the board here at 7.
Who's Goff throwing to though?
Thank you. If this is a make it or break it thing for Jared Goff, who are they throwing to? Because their offensive line, at least stat-wise, held up in terms of pressure. And that is a real need at receiver. If you're trying to see if Jared Goff is your guy in the future, you've got to give him someone to throw
Smith,
to.
Heisman Trophy winner.
There's a lot of receivers in this draft. You have to be strategic. When you have the number 1 tackle instead of the 3rd receiver, I'm taking the number 1 tackle.
Well, with the tackles dropping, there's going to be more tackles that's going to drop into the 2nd round that had 1st-round grades. So if you're the Lions, you got to figure out, do you want the explosive player, the best receiver, one of the best receivers, or do you want to go protection?
But the Lions' next pick is 41, and I see the point where you could get your guy, Rondale Moore, potentially at 41.
Don't put that out there, Ricky Bobby. Don't put him out there yet.
Seriously, you could get Rondale Moore in the 2nd round, right?
Rondale Moore, but he's a little guy. You need somebody to replace Galladay on the outside.
I totally get that, but
we
you
got
have
some of
the
those
ability
too.
to do that later in the second round.
Kevin, totally agree. There's tons of receivers, and this is an offensive line that, again, I think Taylor Decker is an okay player. They took Ragnow in the first round. He's been solid for them, but this could use certainly an upgrade at right tackle. And now you have Sewell, who to me...
Swift. Yeah.
Well, you have DeAndre Swift, who is a very good young running back. You do lose Galladay. They did sign Terrell Williams, which I didn't think made any sense.
Really?
But you could come back and get a receiver. Again, you got to be thinking strategically here. There are so many receivers in this draft. You could have the number one tackle. To me, this is the right fit for them.
And let's, again, remind everyone that in the offseason, they brought in Dan Campbell, but their offensive coordinator is Anthony Lynn, who was fired from, I still always want to call them the San Diego Chargers.
Well, we know Anthony Lynn really well in this room.
Right, exactly. So that's an interesting prospect because we all know, why Jared Goff ended up going there, right? Because his new GM, Brad Holmes, served as the Rams' director of college scouting, right? So he's the one that decided, let's take a flyer on Jared Goff. You think Anthony Lynn, people are crediting him with what he was able to do with Justin Herbert. You think Anthony Lynn can re-energize Jared Goff and make him something consistent?
It's going to be based on running the ball. Anthony Lynn is all about running the ball.
Sure.
Tony's a former running back for the Denver Broncos, and when he had his success, he's always been about establishing the run and getting ahead of the sticks. But still, I still believe that I'm taking the receiver. Because I'm looking at, I can get Elijah Tucker in the second round. There's a lot of guys that's going to fall. This board is different from anything we thought. We thought it was going to be a run on quarterbacks. It's going to be a run on quarterbacks near the middle part where people from the bottom of the draft is going to be trying to move up to get these quarterbacks at like 15, 13, 9.
You're hearing sort of the chatter. Here comes Commissioner Goodell. The Lions pick is in. He's about to announce it very quickly. Last predictions. Who's he going with? You're going with Penei Sewell?
Absolutely.
All right. Here we go. Here is the pick.
For the third pick in a row.
Yeah.
With the 7th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Penei Sewell.
There it is.
Tackle, Oregon.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
An opt-out who maintained a high grade despite not playing this year. Had he played, maybe we wouldn't have been talking about him in those glowing terms like an Orlando Pace, a Tony Baselli, a Jonathan Ogden. I still think he can be that good a left tackle. Didn't allow a sack in 2019. Only 2 hits allowed on the quarterback in 926 snaps. 2018 as a true freshman. Didn't have a penalty. Only 1 sack allowed in 450 snaps. Now, he did miss 6 games with a high ankle sprain, but a smart football player, fundamentally sound. As I say, mistake-free basically in his year and a half as a starter at left tackle at Oregon.
So there it is. The Lions decide to go with protection for Jared Goff, selecting Oregon tackle Penei Sewell, the 2019 Outland Trophy winner. He did opt out of the 2020 season, but made a little history. First Polynesian, first sophomore, and first Duck to win that award. Your thoughts, Mikey T, very quickly on the decision to go offensive line protection.
Yeah, I think Mel nailed the analysis. He is, when you watch him play, he has great feet for somebody that's a naturally big man. Now, he has to get a little bit stronger. I think his conditioning could actually really improve. But when you're talking about a guy coming out of this draft class, I think he's one of maybe the 2 or 3 best football players with Kyle Pitts. And I think if you're the head coach and Dan Campbell, you want to fortify that offensive line. We touched on it. You have Ragnow. You have Taylor Decker. This is a really good fit for the Detroit, which has really struggled historically in protecting Matt Stafford.
The guy can adjust as well. I mean, if you look at it, he enrolled at late in June a couple years ago at Oregon, and then by early September, he was the starting left tackle, and he's been a mainstay. I love this backstory about him, too. He has 2 older brothers. When he was 6, they would just tackle him, his 2 older brothers. So he had no choice to be tough. Right. And then one day his parents came home and they noticed that the furniture was rearranged and they were trying to figure out why. Well, his brothers had moved the furniture and they would do just basically WWE style and they would just beat each other up. And Penei created a hole on the side of the wall that they protected him by covering it up. So the guy's been around it since the beginning. It's 6'6", 330 pounds. I think it's a slam dunk in protecting Jared Goff.
I wish him well, man. Stay away from Coney Island, man. You can get real fat in Detroit real quick eating that good food.
Okay, we do want to go back to the top of the draft, though, as you are listening to round 1 of the NFL Draft on ESPN Radio with Elle Duncan, Kevin Negandhi, Bart Scott, Mike Tannenbaum, Ian Fitzsimmons. We all knew Trevor Lawrence was going to go number 1 overall, opted to stay home and celebrate with his family. Marty Smith was there, as only Marty Smith could be, and caught up with Trevor Lawrence.
How do you describe this moment with all your friends and family? It's pretty surreal. Obviously, this has been like the dream for the past few years, and like I've said before, I didn't even dream this as a kid, so really special, and just having all the people that I care about here and watching, it's really hard to explain, honestly. I was like super nervous before, and just so excited to be a part of the Jacksonville community. Thank you, Mr. Khan, the whole Jaguars coaching staff, management. Thank you guys so much for trusting in me and the fans. I'm super excited to come down to Jacksonville and play for you guys, and I just can't wait to go to work.
We've heard our analysts say it this evening. This has basically been predestined and expected of you since the 8th grade. This moment right here, and it's here. What's it been like to carry that weight?
I mean, it's not always easy. Sometimes it's heavy, but I think just surrounding yourself with good people, that's something that I've always tried to do. I've learned a lot here in Clemson, obviously, about becoming a man and a leader and all those things, and under Coach Sweeney especially. And I'm really just so thankful for my family and my friends and the people that are around me every day. It's kind of who keeps me grounded. It's just super special to have them all be a part of it.
Trevor Lawrence there with our Marty Smith. That was no surprise that he would be the number one pick. Guys, I think the surprise here is that as the Panthers are on the clock, that we are trending towards this conversation that there are still two quarterbacks available.
Yeah.
And you hear that the pick is in. We will get to it in a moment, but that is Mac Jones and Justin Fields, and there's a connection that Matt Rule has with Mac Jones, Mike T.
Yeah, he coached them in the Senior Bowl, and you could just watch it. We were broadcasting it for ESPN. You could tell Matt Rule really liked Mac Jones. We'll see if that carries the day. We talked about Daniel Jones a couple years ago. Last year, Justin Herbert. Mac Jones had a great Senior Bowl, coached by Matt Rule. Let's see if that gets it over the top here with the 8th pick.
Sam Darnold's too talented.
You're shaking your head there.
Sam Darnold's too talented.
Then why didn't they exercise the option?
Go get Rashawn Slater.
But they should have exercised the option, said, hey, Sam's our guy.
Yeah, offensive line Bart. Is a big need, too.
I'm with Bart on that. Rashawn Slater is an absolute road grader.
He's better than Sewell.
Because maybe, Kevin, what he's looking at is, while we're saying, well, maybe you need to draft a quarterback, maybe what Matt Rule is looking at is the fact that he had super average quarterback play, and still 8 of his 11 losses came within 8 points or fewer. They were in every, and they didn't have Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
They were in every game. All he needs is a quote-unquote game manager.
Robbie Anderson and Sam Darnold are electric together.
Well, you nailed it there on the conversation, and Rule has talked about that a handful of times, that they looked at the film and they were just 1 or 2 big throws away from winning a whole bunch of games. Don't forget, Joe Brady's the OC there. A year ago, Matt Rule changed the entire roster, went all defense last year, and now he has the opportunity, to get his quarterback. I know you brought up Sam Darnold. I'm going to bring it up in terms of finance, right? You reset the clock, and that's what the Jets did. While Darnold's only 23, you still are coming up.
$18 million
You're still coming up. You get to reset the clock over the next 5 years if you get your guy, right?
I reset the clock when I tell McCaffrey that he got to take a pay cut because he's a running back making $100 million.
Well, that was a mistake. No doubt about it at the running back position.
Let me give you one other name, is J.C. Horn. They need a corner. I know J.C. Horn was somebody that they felt good about. So I think if they went offensive side of the ball, I think Mac Jones makes sense. If they go defense, look for someone like J.C. Horn.
So you're saying J.C. Horn?
Yeah, who would be the first defensive player?
I'm saying Slater.
For the Panthers?
They need protection.
With the 8th pick.
Justin Fields.
In the 2021 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select J.C. Horn.
Wow.
Defensive back, South Carolina.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Son of former NFL wide receiver Joe Horn. You know his history. You know how he became this kind of player. Press coverage, in-your-face guy, aggressive football player, 23 pass breakups. You think about a guy who really, in man-to-man coverage, will eliminate that top receiver. He did it in college. He did it against highly competitive competition, great players in the SEC. That's why some have argued, and I think it's correct to say, he was the best all-around cornerback in this draft.
Mike T, well done on that call. That is a surprise here. Still a need, but a surprise. The son of Joe Horn. And when you look at his size, 6'1", 205 pounds out of South Carolina, Ian.
Yeah, he's an absolute specimen. And one SEC offensive coordinator told me, quote, People say athletic genetics tend to be passed on. Well, Horn is a beneficiary in this case. His dad not only played for over a decade, all the Pro Bowls and accolades as a wide receiver for the Saints. JC brings that same athletic talent, but on the other side of the ball, he told me, I think he's better than Surtain at Alabama. Horn is a plug-and-play day one starter, quote, end quote.
It's interesting, too, Mikey T, because the Panthers were absolutely abysmal at picking quarterbacks' pockets. They just didn't do it. And I know that specifically with J.C. Horn, we saw him have 2 interceptions in his final season at South Carolina, which was double what he had in his first 2 seasons. Do you see him as a guy that can be a threat there for Carolina?
Yeah, and here's something that's really ironic, Elle, which is there's a great axiom of you got to win your division before you want to get to where you want to go. And the one player that Kyle Pitts struggled with a little bit was J.C. Horn. J.C. Horn actually played and defended Kyle Pitts well, and I'm not sure that wouldn't be the only reason they would make this pick. But if you're in the NFC South and you're going against these high-octane offenses...
Mike Thomas.
Yeah. We have Mike Thomas in New Orleans and obviously all the weapons in Tampa. You got to get off the field at some point, and that's why... Now you have a premier shutdown corner. I like Patrick Surtain a little bit more than J.C. Horn, but to me, it was those two draw a line, and then we'll get into Greg Newsome in a little bit. But here's a really telling stat. He only allowed a completion percentage of 31% of targeted defenders, and that was second best in the SEC. That's really remarkable. If they get anywhere close to that, this will turn out to be a really good pick for Carolina.
Hey, and knocking on the door at number 9 is Elle Duncan's Denver Broncos.
Right, you thought I went off about the Falcons?
And
they're not even my team.
And you have 2 options at quarterback here as we continue this conversation with Justin Fields.
If they don't take a quarterback, I quit.
Right?
Not really, but I will be very unhappy.
See, I think that the opinion of Drew Lock outside the building is completely different of the opinion of Drew Lock inside.
Why would you say
building.
that, though, Ian? Because if they felt confident in any way with Drew Lock, why would they make a trade for Teddy Bridgewater?
Competition fuels the soul, and guess what? You're one play away from needing another quarterback.
Stop.
You gave up a 6th-round pick for him.
I know you just gave up absolutely nothing for him, but we all know Drew Lock is not the answer. He's not the answer.
I'm just telling you. That's what I've been told.
Which quarterback do you want, Elle?
I would love to take Justin Fields.
Trade
just keep
listen, with our offensive line, he's going to have to run for his life a little bit. Mac Jones is not the one. He doesn't fit in that system.
If that happens, right, then you start looking at Cowboys don't need a quarterback. Giants don't need a quarterback.
He could
Eagles
slide
are
to
12, and then I think Howie Roseman's on the phone because
absolutely
the Patriots are on the line.
Yep.
Potentially, I don't know if he's talking to Washington. The Steelers are on the line. The Bears are on the line.
So, Kevin, we talked about this. It's that group of 4, Washington, Pittsburgh, Chicago, New England. So I agree. I thought both quarterbacks would be off the board by right around here. If one gets a little bit further down, again, there's the other intrigue to me is 10, 11, 12. The 3 NFC East teams all have similar needs. You're right, though. I think it would be Howie Roseman sitting at 12, Kevin, that could possibly back out if one of those other teams wants to come up.
You are listening to the NFL Draft on ESPN Radio. We now pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is the NFL Draft. And the Denver Broncos are on the clock as we await. You are listening to round 1 of the NFL Draft here on ESPN Radio with myself, Elle Duncan, Kevin Negandhi, Mike Tannenbaum, Bart Scott, and Ian Fitzsimmons. We have you covered from every aspect, the front office, the player, and of course the intimate knowledge that Ian has of these players coming out of college. The Broncos are on the clock. They are my team. We've been talking about sort of what they need. Drew Lock, I get that Ian's saying outside of the building. The numbers don't lie. He is the worst quarterback statistically in terms of being able to throw the ball downfield. I watched every single one of those games. You're talking about the Panthers saying they were a throwaway here and there. So were the Broncos. They've got a really solid defense after retooling it the last couple of years. They've gotten some surprisingly good play from Garrett Bowles, who could have been the comeback player of the year last year, considering how much of a change he's made. And now we've got a guy who we claim to be some quarterback whisperer in Pat Shurmur, who's their offensive coordinator. And he hasn't been able to whisper nothing to Drew Lock. So you have an opportunity to draft someone here. I don't understand why you don't address that need. They have swung and 10,
Teddy Bridgewater,
10
though.
different starting. He's not an answer either. He is a Teddy Bridge to the next quarterback.
So who gets traded? Traded then, because then now you guys are trying to get some value.
Who
cares?
cares?
You don't have Drew Lock.
Cut him. You didn't pay anything for Teddy Bridgewater.
You just said you need protection. You got Rashawn Slater right there.
Thank you,
sitting
Bart.
there.
They've done.
That can help the Melvin Gordon in the running game.
They don't need offensive line help. They need a linebacker more than they need offensive line help.
I agree. I think they need a corner badly, not a safety.
AJ Boye?
Yeah, who? Duke Dawson?
They signed Ronald Darby.
Yeah,
and they added Kyle Fuller and Ronald Darby. They're looking.
They're good at corner. They got three corners.
They're solid for now at corner.
Yeah, I think Darby's a little bit of a journeyman. Duke Dawson's a little bit undersized.
Kyle Fuller's a beast. He was with Big Fangio. He's with Big Fangio.
He's the number one. But when you look at Darby the last couple of years, I don't think he's by any means a frontline player. And I think, anyway, we could debate their corner situation. When you look at tackle, Juwan James is coming back. Someone I had in Miami, he is a really good player. Garrett Bowles is coming back. He's been an opt-out. I think it could be Micah Parsons because
if it's Micah Parsons, she will walk out of this.
Michael Parsons at 9.
That's what I'm saying. We might as well trust
Big Fangio. Yeah,
they have to go quarterback here. Al. I'm with you, El. They have to go quarterback. And Bart, I can't figure you out. Now you want to go offensive line. Now you want to go offensive line when the Bengals desperately need an offensive line.
Zay Collins is the best linebacker in this draft, not Michael Parsons.
We're about a minute away from potentially L. Duncan celebrating or combusting inside our studios.
And listen, let me also say this, in all fairness to Drew Lock, okay? Because no matter who comes, if they decide to draft a quarterback right here, guess who has to actually catch the ball? Jerry Jeudy has got to catch the ball. I think he probably led the league in drops. Same with KJ Hamler. Neither one of them could catch the ball when appropriate.
They have coming back, though, right?
They've got Sutton coming back. He tore his ACL. They've got Noah Fant, who they're hoping to get a little bit more out of. So they are yoked. He is not lacking in weapons. And again, despite that, Drew Lock, Ian, convinced me otherwise, completed 57% of his passes. Like, stop it.
All I'm telling you is what I've heard about inside the building, the opinion compared to the perception outside of the building, which I've been watching for the last 7 minutes. And Kevin Negandhi, I'm going to start praying for you at 6 o'clock every day.
Hey, listen, I'm an Eagles fan, so trust me, she enjoys my pain as well. We are both petty in this conversation.
I'm already mad, Kevin. Like, I'm shaking my head like I anticipate that they're going to go with, like, Micah Parsons here.
This is best player available, and to me, it's either Slater or Surtain.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's either going to be Rashawn Slater or Patrick
I hope
Surtain.
It is Justin
I'm going
Fields.
Surtain.
Here is Commissioner Goodell with the Broncos.
With the 9th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Pat Surtain, Jr., defensive back, Alabama.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Patrick Surtain gave up some big plays in the last couple of years, and I understand that and I see it on tape, but I love his length. I love his professional attack to the job that he has, and I love how physical he is. And you need a cornerback in today's game that's going to support the run, is going to go and be physical in the screen game, and he does all of those things. And I think he'll continue to get better as time goes on. He's long, he's physical, he's athletic, he has all the tools, and he's been raised to be a number one corner in the NFL.
Do I get credit for that one, by the way?
That's you. But you are very close to L. Duncan, so I would just make sure I wouldn't brag about it.
Can't have enough corners.
Let's get L's first reaction, as she has been quiet for the last 60 seconds.
I get what the Broncos' approach here is. They won a Super Bowl with a fantastic defense, okay? And I get that. But even Peyton Manning, who was a shell of himself that last year, was better than Drew Lock. I just don't understand how you don't address a glaring need. And maybe, help me here, Mikey T, is this Peyton saying they have whiffed so many times? The Broncos have had 10 different starting quarterbacks since Peyton Manning retired, that he just doesn't feel strongly enough about either one of these quarterbacks is left to take another shot at a quarterback?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I mean, George Payton, in theory, is the guy making the decisions, not John Elway. And a couple of things that are really interesting to me. One is, again, I thought corner was a position they needed. Kyle Fuller only signed a one-year deal, so that's certainly a position that they're going to need a frontline player moving forward. But here's the thing that's interesting to me. You have a new GM coming in who has nothing to do with Drew Lock being in the building. I'm a little bit surprised, to L's point, that Drew Lock survive that scrutiny? Because if I'm George Paton and I have both Mac Jones and Justin Fields sitting there, what has George Paton, their new GM, seen in Drew Lock to say, hey, we should eliminate those guys? Again, I love Surtain. He was my number one defensive player. I thought it was a position of need. It makes sense. But if I'm a new GM and I have the upside of both Justin Fields and Mac Jones, I'm a little bit surprised by this pick.
Yeah, Pat Surtain, he comes from a phenomenal pedigree. His dad, of course, very outgoing and a Pro Bowler when he played with the Dolphins. And Pat Jr. is one of those quiet guys. But when you're at Alabama, you don't need to be flashy, Ian.
No, and I talked to several different SEC offensive coordinators that had it was a common theme. He's a technician, and he just doesn't get beat. His technique is almost flawless. And obviously, that comes from growing up with his pops. But his roommate was Jalen Waddle. And you talk about competition, they would wake up at 5 a.m. and try and beat each other in sprints, and how many stadiums you could run, and how many push-ups you could do. To going back to the apartment and video games, when to kick each other's butts on the sticks. Any way they could test each other, they did. So it was Surtain and Waddle in step together. He's quiet, but my gosh, can this man... It's a lockdown corner. I mean, he's a unicorn at the corner position. That's it. Put him out there on an island, and 2 will take your guy.
But in that division, what do you have to go against? You got to go against some elite offenses, and you got to be able to try and slow them down. You think about Kansas City. The first thing any team is trying to do...
Score too, Bart.
But you have to design your team to win your conference. And to win your conference, you got to go against Patrick Mahomes. You got to go against Justin Herbert that lit the league up. You think about what they have available at the wide receiver position. You can't have one corner. You got to have 2. I wonder what happens now, how this affects the Dallas Cowboys and what happens as far as trading back. Because when you think about Dallas, now both of the guys that they were keen to is off the board. Where do they go from here?
Okay, well, all I know is I just watched a bunch of Broncos games last year where they lost 6-12. And so that tells me that your defense isn't exactly a problem. You can't put any points on the board. Sorry, Kevin. Go ahead. No.
I just want to say this real quick. The Eagles are now on the clock.
Aha.
Oh.
They just moved up.
It's a trade.
With the Cowboys. This tells me that they need to get Devontae Smith because the Giants are sitting there at 11.
But if you're Philly, why would you? If you're Dallas, why would you help Philly?
Because you're not taking a receiver. If you could get a third-round pick, we got to get the details of the trade here.
It's crazy.
But it's rare that you see a NFC trade within the same division.
Yeah, well, this will be interesting because, again, when you see the run of the wide receivers, and I think Howie Roseman was thinking at 12, by that time 2 spots would have been taken by quarterbacks. And as a result, the Cowboys get the 12th pick and a third-round pick. So just to move 2 spots, the Eagles hand over the 81st pick overall in the third round, and now they are sitting on the clock. And again, they have a handful of needs. Offensive line, you can make a case for a pass rusher because they are getting a little old on the edge with Brandon Graham. But the biggest key, they have struck out in the Howie Roseman era in drafting cornerbacks and drafting wide receivers. And last year was the perfect example.
Rinker and Nelson, Aguilar isn't great? What are you talking about?
Come on now.
Unlike Aguilar.
Don't poke the bear here on this one, Bart. We're going from one side to the other with Els Broncos and my Eagles here and how they have failed to hit 2 specific needs in this draft in the past.
And Philly does have 2-3, so if you're going up for Devontae Smith, you still have a 3, which is smart. And look, Devontae Smith is a really, really good player. Obviously, he won the Heisman Trophy. I am concerned he weighed 166 pounds. And the history of undersized receivers isn't great. Hollywood Brown recently.
Deshaun Jackson.
Deshaun Jackson.
I will say this, I know what you guys are saying, but the one thing, knowing the Eagles wide receivers, you guys brought up Nelson Aguilar, Devontae Smith does not drop the football. And that was a reoccurring theme here. Yeah. They bring in Jalen Reagor. He couldn't stay on the field. And, I still have nightmares of the Vikings draft room laughing when they made the Reagor pick and then Justin Jefferson fell into their lap. And I think that, again, they have 2 massive needs. That is cornerback, and is this a Caleb Farley, but the injury concerns, or is this Devontae Smith right now?
They need a receiver. Yeah, they lost Alshon Jeffries.
Yeah, I just don't think you could take Caleb Farley this high and give up an extra pick just knowing all the questions you have about his back. So this really lines up. If you're Philadelphia, you're saying we think the New York Giants are going to draft Devontae Smith, which I don't think they would have. But the other thing you have to say yourself, maybe another team would. we have 2 threes. Let's give it one of the 2 threes to get somebody
That's
we
interesting
need.
you say that. You don't think that the Giants would have drafted Devontae Smith?
I think the Giants desperately need a pass rusher. I think that's going to be Kwity Paye or Azeez Ojulari. I think, when was the last time we sat here and said, wow, the New York Giants have good pressure players in the front 7? It's been a long time. They got Kenny Golladay. I like
Leonard Williams did a good job last year.
That's
11
one.
sacks.
You were listening to round 1 of the NFL Draft here on ESPN Radio with Mike Tannenbaum, our front office insider, Bart Scott, bringing the player perspective, Ian Fitzsimmons bringing us the stories. He knows these guys intimately that are being drafted, and of course Kevin Negandhi and Elle Duncan holding you down from the host position. I do, when it comes to Devontae Smith, I mean, as a Georgia fan, I personally hate him because of his catch in the national championship, but it's interesting to me how just in the season, and again, knee-jerk reactions and recency bias, I get that. We were talking about how transformational and generational a talent Devontae Smith was. He wins the Heisman, they win the national championship, and yet he's the third wide receiver potentially off the board. Why is that? Like, why does he sort of come in at that place considering he has got a long list of personal accolades?
Size. I think at the end of the day, Jamar
Size
Chase
matters.
And Waddle, a lot of people thought was Tyreek Hill, from an explosive standpoint.
So the Eagles, Kevin, the pick is in. We just heard the chime, and if you're just joining us, it was supposed to be the Cowboys that were picking after the Broncos here at number 10, and instead they trade the pick to the Eagles. They get the number 12 pick and the third-round pick instead. And Kevin, as we await the prediction, you're feeling what kind of way as your team makes a trade?
I got bubble guts, and they're going to continue for a long time. Just because of the track record with the Eagles. They have let many people in Philadelphia down repeatedly. And this was a pick, and it remains to be a pick that they cannot afford to miss. They have missed badly in the first 2 rounds the last couple of years, and it's come back to haunt this roster when you look at the talent of the roster. They don't have the talent that you saw in 2017.
They got old.
They got old quick.
Guys. This is going to be Joe Burrow got his guy in Jamar Chase. Tua got his guy in Jalen Waddle. Jalen Hurts is going to get his guy, former teammate, in Devontae Smith.
Big question, though, is will Jalen Hurts be the quarterback in 2022?
That's a different
conversation. Right. Yeah. Do they care about helping him in that way?
Nick Sirianni, this is his first pick as a new head coach in the National Football League, and the commissioner's making his way to the podium to announce the selection at number 10, the Philadelphia Eagles, who traded back and then up to get this pick.
Paper beat rock.
I was going to say, how many times have they won in this
The
company?
Dallas Cowboys have traded the 10th pick to the Philadelphia Eagles. With the 10th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Devontae Smith, wide receiver, Alabama.
That was too easy.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
In 20 years of evaluating wide receivers, I have never seen someone have a better single season than Devontae Smith. I mean, this guy showed up when Jalen Waddle got injured, and when the team needed him so much. He's so competitive, and he is silky smooth. I compare him to Marvin Harrison. And Harrison he doesn't look like the number 1 receiver. He's not 6'4", he's not 220 pounds, but he knows how to get open. He's tough, he goes over the middle, he does the dirty work, and he's so explosive after the catch. I think Devontae Smith is going to be a star in the NFL.
From your lips to God's ears, Todd McShay, we will see how that plays out here. The key is, and I joked around about this on Get Up while we were talking about the Eagles with Dan Orlovsky, they just need to get a guy that's going to be playing 16 games, is healthy, and can have an impact with this roster immediately. And he's that type of guy.
But, Kevin, that's the problem right there is you really want him to play in 17 games, but 166 pounds. You have the same durability.
Well said.
I couldn't resist. I'll tell you what, though. Here's what's really remarkable when we talk about, and Todd McShay alluded to it when he was just talking about his season. He had 117 catches. And, guys, let's frame the discussion here. A year ago, Jerry Jeudy, Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. It's hard to defend 4 receivers. This year, it was only one. It was Devontae Smith after Jalen Waddle got hurt. So when you know, Bart, that the opposing team has one great receiver, usually can take him out of the game, right. They weren't able to do that. And I was at that national championship game, 2 loaded teams, Ohio State, Alabama. And to me, of those 22 players, the best football player was Devontae Smith.
I mean, greatness comes in all shapes and sizes, but, we're going to see if he's able to handle the elite cornerbacks in the league that can get up in his chest. And are they going to have to protect him by putting him in the slot? It's going to be interesting. Listen, but he's a great player. He's going to be able to stretch the field. He's durable. They can put him inside at the slot. You know, he can give them a lot of versatility to that offense, and maybe they still have a little connection with Shake and Bake and Jalen Hurts, who can remember, that nonverbal communication, all of which is super important, when you talk about, first-year receivers being on the same page with their quarterback. A lot of that is seeing the same thing the same way.
You are listening to the first round of the NFL Draft on ESPN Radio with Mike Tannenbaum, L. Duncan, Bart Scott, Kevin Negandhi, and Ian Fitzsimmons. Another trade alert. It looks like the NFC East is busy, either moving up or moving out. We were anticipating that the next pick was going to be the New York Giants at number 11, but the Chicago Bears have come in and traded. They jumped from 20 up to 11.
Save my job.
Does that tell you that they are going to take a quarterback?
Save my job.
Dave Gettleman, for the first time in the history of Dave Gettleman, has made a trade back. He had 5,442 picks. I'm being a little facetious, but they were killing him in New York because Dave's a longtime GM. He had never traded back. This is the first time he has. Obviously,
Chicago.
The Bears are taking a quarterback.
Does this save their job? Is this in case of emergency break glass?
They're breaking glass.
But tell me this as well. Do you have to get the okay from the owner when you know that your
100%.
job's on the line and say okay?
Wow, yeah. Do you see what this haul was that they gave us?
This is Ryan Pace trying to save his job for next year.
Oh, my gosh. The Giants get pick number 20, the Bears pick, a 5th-round pick, a 2022 first-round pick, and 4th-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long haul. That's you moving up far. From
to
20,
move up
from
9
20,
spots?
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That is a GM and a head coach saying, we understand the situation. We need to save our jobs for the next 3 to 5 years.
Look what San Francisco did to move from 12 to 3. That's equal compensation.
I like the move for the Bears for one reason only.
No QB1.
You're going to get a quarterback, right? And you're going to get a quarterback here at this point that's going to actually give the fan base some hope. Yeah. And now the question is, who is the quarterback?
Exactly. Who are they taking there?
If you look at Matt Nagy and the style of play, you would say it's Justin Fields.
It has to be.
Because if you go back to the success that Matt Nagy's had, not only in Philadelphia, but more recently in Kansas City, it's that athletic quarterback. And to me, Justin Fields is a really good scheme fit for the way Matt Nagy likes to play the position.
You know how you get that lightning bug and you just have the jar and you just hold it open and it just falls to you? Man, this is exactly what New England Patriots are doing. They're just holding the jar open and Matt Jones just holding it into the day and going into the jar, man. This couldn't work out better for New England. They have to give them no compensation. They already loaded their team. They have Cam Newton. I mean, this is crazy. But you think about Chicago in case break glass. Now they're going to try and get some of that capital back because remember now they have Andy Dalton and they have Nick Foles, so they're going to trade one of them and maybe get a 6th-round draft pick
for
back.
What?
Or a 6th-round draft. A lot of people need veteran quarterbacks. The Jets need a veteran quarterback to come in and be a backup. Andy Dalton be a great mentor to a guy like Zach Wilson.
We do see that the pick is in. You heard the chime. So as we await that, the team here seems to believe that this pick for the Bears is going to be a quarterback. And per Mike Tannenbaum, sounds like Justin Fields is a good fit. I think this is a good time to remind people, Ian, at home, why on earth did Justin Fields go from a few months ago to the second best quarterback prospect in the draft to seemingly slipping and now potentially being taken as the 4th best quarterback?
That's a great question. I asked one NFL GM that very thing on Monday, and he said, what boards is he slipping on? Because on my board, he hasn't moved. Now, this one NFL GM doesn't need a quarterback, but he said, if you looked at the other 31 boards around the league, because on ours, he has not moved. And I think Justin Fields, the thing about last season, people forget, is that he had the weight of not just Ohio State on his shoulders, but the Big Ten Conference. If it wasn't for Justin Fields, the Big Ten isn't playing football. I mean, that's a stone-cold fact.
Absolutely.
I mean, he pressured the commissioner who prematurely called the season and said punt, knowing the Pac-12 was going to follow him, and then expecting the other 3 Power 5s to. Well, the others didn't. And so all of a sudden now the Big Ten was on this island. Justin Fields got him a boat and an oar and said, no, we're getting off the island. We're playing ball. And he had the weight of that entire conference there on him. He was trying to play hero ball a bit against Indiana. And then, I mean, that's a fact. He was. You go back and watch the tape. He was trying to hit every play as a home run. Same thing against Northwestern, where he was playing without Chris Olave and 2 offensive linemen. Then you turn on the Clemson game. I mean, that's the Justin Fields we like. That's the Justin Fields is going to be a star.
Through this year's Draftathon, the NFL is supporting our nation's path to recovery from COVID-19 by focusing on the critical issues of mental health, food insecurity, health disparities, and the digital divide. Throughout the pandemic, health disparities widened in communities of color, indigenous communities, and for older and rural Americans. We're joining forces with the CDC Foundation as part of a draft-a-thon to meet the basic needs like nutrition, safety, and health. Carlos Nelson, who's behind me, has been doing just that, leading the Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation in Chicago. His dream of creating a federally qualified health center to provide medical care in his neighborhood is becoming a reality with support from the Chicago Bears, and it will open in 2022. Congratulations, Carlos, and please take it away with the Bears selection. Thank you. I'm excited.
Boy, how exciting is this? With the 11th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, my Chicago Bears select Justin Fields, quarterback, Ohio State.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Justin Fields is still a work in progress in terms of going through his progressions, going from the number one receiver to two, and waiting to see his wide receiver come open. But physically, I don't think there's a more talented quarterback in this class. And I'm including Trevor Lawrence in that conversation. And people are talking about him not having a great work ethic. He went vegan. I don't even know how he did that. And just watch him running that 4.44 in his 40-yard dash at the pro day, and look at his body and how hard he's worked to get to where he is. I think his best football is still ahead of him, and I think if he's in the right situation, he's going to be a star in the NFL.
So there it is, the Chicago Bears, who we have all been saying this entire time through this draft evaluation process, they cannot feel good. Starting the season with Andy Dalton and Nick Foles as their options, they draft Justin Fields. Do you imagine, because again, Justin Fields is a guy that was the top quarterback prospect coming out of high school, lands at Georgia, doesn't beat out Jake Fromm for a bevy of reasons, mostly because Kirby Smart didn't evaluate him properly. So he essentially has less than a year and a half experience, if you will, right, at the quarterback position. Do you see Mike T, him projecting as an immediate plug-and-play starter here for Chicago, or are they going to lean on the veterans for a little bit?
So, we got Bart here that could certainly weigh in on this as well, but your ultimate referendum is, in the NFL, players will follow who they believe gives them the best chance to win. So you may just say, first couple of reps, hey, Dalton, you get 3, Fields, you get 3, Foles, you get 3. It's going to become quickly apparent. Justin Fields' skill set and talent is much better than those guys. As soon as they feel like he can handle the offense, I would expect him to play, especially given the situation that they have to show progress.
Yeah.
One thing you got to give Chicago credit, they were on the hot seat. That was, now it's all going to be, hey, what's the trajectory of Justin Fields? They just have to show progress this year. That could be 6 wins, 8 wins, but if he looks like he's the guy, then they could be on their way. I don't think he has to start from day one, but he has to show that he can function in the offense, and I don't think that will take a long time given how smart he is.
You see that look in that guy's eyes? That's the same look that Lamar Jackson had when he felt like he was disrespected, and the team moved up to get him, means that they wanted him, that they was aggressive to get him. So they're going to get the best out of Justin Fields, and he's going to be a man on a mission. I can see him taking over by game 6 and taking over, and that young defense going to say, hey, young fella, what I would do if I was a good defense team like Chicago, like, hey, young fella, come on in. We got you. And tell the coaches, start the young one. We'll do whatever we got to do to keep us in the game.
Kevin, one of the criticisms of Fields is that he compounds mistakes. He doesn't make a ton of them, but when he does, he compounds them, right? Especially when you talk about turning the ball over. He's only thrown an interception in 5 career games, but in 3 of those 5 games, he coughed up multiple times, right? So he doesn't have a short memory.
Excellent point, too. And I think that's a guy that's trying a little too hard, specifically in that Indiana and Northwestern games. And let's talk about Indiana and Northwestern. They are not the normal Indiana Northwestern teams that we've seen in the past. They were top 10 defenses. Yep. You could make a case there that Indiana was the best defense in the country. Northwestern, a top 5 defense, too. So I'm not trying to justify Justin Fields' performance in those 2 games, but I will also say he had a fantastic 2019 season. And one of the things that really, it's small, but during the pandemic, he decided to go to an herbal diet, right? And for 28 days, he dropped 12 pounds. That was a competition with his family, right, Ian?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And here's the thing about Justin Fields. Think about this. I've only seen 2 quarterbacks light up a Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator for Clemson. There's only been 2 that I've seen light him up. One was Joe Burrow in the national championship game. The other, in the Sugar Bowl, the one I just referenced this year, Justin Fields absolutely carved up Venables' Clemson defense.
And Fitz, just to build on that, when you look at Justin Fields, he's a big frame guy. He has a much better body composition due to his diet. But I think of all these guys, he looks like he has the best NFL body moving forward. I know Dallas is on the clock now. I got to think that this is still going to be a defensive player or maybe Rashawn Slater. The other interesting thing that I think is, to me, where I would be nervous if I was the New England Patriots, Bart, you brought up the whole idea of, like, is Mac Jones falling to New England? Yeah. If I was them, I would be worried about a couple teams behind them. Washington at 19 in particular could come up. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback as well. They're sitting there at 24. Does New England maybe try to go up a couple spots to secure their quarterback because things are falling their way? There's nobody else that it looks like on paper would need a quarterback, but if I'm New England, maybe I give up a second or third round pick to secure Mac Jones.
Yeah, I mean, because if that's your guy and you're convinced that he's the guy that can be the heir apparent, kind of, we talk about bridge quarterbacks. Well, Cam Newton is a bridge quarterback. In New England, with this roster, is built to handle any type of quarterback. They can handle a young quarterback if they have to. If Cam struggles like he did last year, if he can't stay healthy, he started to skip passes. They have a solid offensive line. When you think about Isaiah Wynn, you think about Trent Brown, you think about the 2 tight ends that they have, and also they have weapons on the outside now. So you can definitely run the ball and throw the ball and give a young quarterback to it.
Throwing out my pick. I think they're going to go Caleb Farley.
Caleb Farley? They need it.
They need DBs.
I'm with you.
That's risky.
It's risky.
But
Greg Newsome is a beast, too.
Jerry loves to take risks, and they need cornerback. Here's the commissioner. Cowboys picking at number 12.
Through Draftathon, we're partnering with Mental Health America to support resources for those that need it. Kanikia Bedrine, an Army veteran from Dallas, struggled with anxiety and depression after returning from Iraq. She turned her struggle into triumph and is now a licensed social worker who provides mental health counseling. Kanikia, we thank you for your service and all you do to continue to help others during this challenging time. Please do us the honor of making the Cowboys pick. Go get him.
Oh, my God. How about them Cowboys? Woo! Yes! And with the 12th pick in the 2021 the NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Micah Parsons. Woo! Linebacker, Penn State. Yeah!
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
6'3", 246-pounder with incredible 4.39 speed, tremendous athletic ability. He has what it takes to be that versatile, move-him-around linebacker. Keep in mind, in 2019, he opted out this year, but in 2019, 109 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles. He was all over the field that year. Had he played this season, there would have been no doubt he would have been one of the elite players in this draft at any position.
What does Dallas taking a linebacker mean in terms of some of the guys that are already there? We've got reaction to the Cowboys' pick of Micah Parsons at number 12. This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, presented by Sherwin-Williams.
This is Keyshawn Johnson from Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. You're listening to the NFL Draft on ESPN Radio.
And welcome back here as we continue our coverage of the NFL Draft on ESPN Radio. Kevin Negandhi alongside Elle Duncan, Mike Tannenbaum, Bart Scott, and Ian Fitzsimmons. The Cowboys just made their pick at number 12. Micah Parsons, the linebacker who opted out at Penn State. Some questions surrounding his past, and he's emotional right now talking about his journey And Mike T, you and I briefly talked about this. By the way, the Chargers are on the clock, then the Vikings, the Patriots sitting there, as well as the Cardinals at 16. And just a reminder, Mac Jones remains on the clock. Mike T, you and I talked about this briefly here. Sean Lee just retired. And this defense, when you look at the Cowboys, they need a ton of help. You get what many people believe is the best defensive player in the draft there at value at number 12.
Yeah, so when we talk about the Cowboys defense, let's start at coordinator. It's Dan Quinn. Sean Lee retires. Leighton Vander Esch has been a good player. He's had neck problems going all the way back to Boise State. They signed Keanu O'Neal, who's really going to be more of a sub-linebacker. He's a safety, but he's much better closer to the line of scrimmage. Micah Parsons, to me, is a really interesting player because he's a great athlete. He's not a pass rusher, but he's a good blitzer. He's also athletic enough to play man-to-man in space. So there's a lot of things he brings to the table. They are still desperate for a couple of things in Dallas. They need a corner, and they need another pass rusher. They lost Aldon Smith. They lost Byron Jones a year ago. They didn't replace him. They lost Josie Adobe. So they need corners. They need pass rushers. But this is a really, really good football player. And one Penn State linebacker retires, another one comes in.
There was a lot of people that believed that the Cowboys were going to take Patrick Surtain or take J.C. Horn. Neither one of them were available because we did see them go off the board. J.C. Horn picked number 8 to go to the Panthers. We saw Patrick Surtain go right after him to Denver at number 9. One of the more awkward, and you're hearing the chime because the L.A. Chargers pick is in. We'll bring you that in just a second. One of the most awkward things, Bart, is for the folks that are at home watching and seeing someone draft what looks like their heir apparent. Who should feel concerned on the Cowboys that they just took Micah Parsons?
Well, I think Vander Esch, right? Because you think, that Dan Quinn loves Keanu O'Neal. Keanu O'Neal, before all the injuries. I know he signed like a 1-year deal, but he was with him in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But also now Vander Esch hasn't been able to stay healthy. So now you have somebody that can fill in because really most of the time you're on the field is going to be in sub positions. So if I'm Jaylen Brown, I'm like, oh, man, I didn't have a great year last year. I'm making a lot of money. I better tighten my game up because they just pretty much hired somebody that is a cheaper version of myself. So sometimes it's bittersweet, right? I can remember DeMario Davis being drafted. Like, okay, I know it ain't for David Harris. I know it's potentially for me. I remember Tavares Gooden from Miami coming in there, and they try to replace me. And that's what it's all about, holding the guys off. You know what I mean? Because as you get more expensive and you get older, you become expendable.
Want to remind our audience, too, a little quick recap. Trevor Lawrence went number 1, followed by Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. So Wilson going to the Jets, Lance going to the 49ers. And then if you take a look at some of the trends here, 3 Alabama players going in the top 10. Jalen Waddle to the Dolphins at 6. And then Patrick Surtain at 9 of the Broncos. The Eagles moving up in a trade with the Cowboys, 2 spots at 10. Taking Devontae Smith.
And then, of course, we saw the Bears move up as well from 20 to take Justin Fields. So the only remaining quarterback on the board at this point is Mac Jones, a guy that this entire time we thought was going to be called very early in the night to San Francisco. They instead decide to go with Trey Lance. Is there someone? It's obviously not going to be the Chargers. They're just fine. They've got Justin Herbert, and they're solid there. Do you see someone, potentially a Patriots or someone trying to move up in the next 30, 40 minutes or so to snatch Mac Jones?
I do. And if I was New England, and I've been in this point like many times in my career, and just telling the story, I start getting nervous again, which is, let's say New England wants him, they're at 15. You are not just looking above you to say, like, we know the Chargers aren't going to take him, probably Minnesota won't, but who could come up, to your point, Al, and that's where you're like, well, could Washington at 19 jump us? Absolutely. Could Pittsburgh at 24 jump us? Absolutely. I am on the clock. Even if it costs me a 4th-round pick, guys, I'm flipping with the Vikings just to block everybody else out, just to know that I have Mac Jones. I mean, it's lining up for New England. They should do everything within reason and 10% more to make sure that they get him. And the other quarterback that we were talking about like 5 hours ago, El, that you've made a couple really interesting points. Where does the Aaron Rodgers conversation begin again? Meaning, which team didn't get a quarterback tonight that still could have interest in him?
I sure hope it's the damn Broncos. I sure hope that they just know something we don't know, that they can get a deal done with Aaron Rodgers. Because listen, and I don't want this to be about Patrick Surtain. I know he's a very good corner. Everyone keeps texting me. All my college football, bros are like, he's a great guy. He's a really good pick. I don't care, Ian. It's not about him. It's not personal. It's not Patrick Surtain. It's the idea that we need a quarterback. But it's not about the Broncos. It's about the Chargers. They don't need a quarterback. They need a left tackle. Is this where Rashawn Slater is going?
There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
We know Tom Telesco.
What about
the general manager? Tommy T is going to protect Justin Herbert. That's it. That's his franchise quarterback. There is zero doubt in my mind they're going Rashawn Slater, Northwestern.
Can I revisit just what Dallas just did? Because even though what Michael Parsons did, I believe, in my opinion, that Zaven Collins is going to have a better career than Michael Parsons.
Are you contractually obligated just to talk about linebackers, Zaven Collins, Michael Parsons? Can we get
it's my specialty.
It feels that way. Again, so Commissioner Goodell is making his way to the podium. Everyone here in agreement that they're going to go Rashawn Slater here.
Mortal lock.
I would bet all the money I've got in my wallet.
Bet Bart's salary.
In the 2021 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Rashawn Slater Jr., tackle, Northwestern.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Here's a guy, guard in high school, comes in, right tackle, first couple of years, then a left tackle, opted out this year, shot put in discus in high school, a kid who I thought when you looked at him against Chase Young at Ohio State in 2019, kept that great pass rusher at bay. He doesn't have necessarily the great length to be a left tackle, but hey, Brad Hopkins didn't as well coming out of college, and he had a great NFL career, so he could be a left tackle, at worst a right tackle or guard. Any which way you slice it, Rashawn Slater gets the maximum out of his ability.
No shock in the room here, as we will have continued reaction on this Chargers pick. And again, a reminder, the Vikings are picking next. They're on the clock. Mac Jones is sitting there and having his Brady Quinn, Aaron Rodgers moment.
He is.
In Cleveland, as the Patriots are sitting at 15. And we will, of course, continue our coverage here on ESPN Radio. Coming up next, reaction to Slater going to the Chargers. And more information as the Vikings are on the clock with the Patriots lurking at 15.
This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app.
I wouldn't.
We now pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio. Welcome back to the studio. Kevin Nagani alongside Elle Duncan and Mike Tannenbaum and Bart Scott and Ian Fitzsimmons. And it has been a very busy night in the teens. We have a trade pending here at 14 where the Vikings are no longer on the clock.
Yeah, we have the Jets on the clock. They decided to move up. They were going to pick again. Of course, they picked number 2. They took Zach Wilson. They were going to pick again at 23, so they jumped up to 14. We'll get you some details on that trade as soon as they come in. What are they doing here?
Well, Elle, here's one thing we know. We know Mac Jones is a New England Patriot because the one thing we know...
They're going next.
The New York Jets are taking a quarterback.
Correct.
This is unbelievable that Mac Jones, who was within a whisker being the third pick in the draft, is going to fall to New England all the way at 15. That's really remarkable.
Who do you foresee, though, the Jets deciding to move up and take?
I think it's going to be offensive line.
Vera Tucker or Durashaw.
Yep.
Who do you like best?
I like Vera Tucker. He's a slightly more versatile player. I like both of them a lot, though. I think they're both frontline starters.
When you look at Vera Tucker, I mean, he's a guard that can play, tackle as well, 6'5", 305 pounds out of USC. Darisaul's, he's a soft-spoken kid from Virginia Tech. You just know immediately he's a dude. Left tackle, shut it down. We don't have to worry again. The biggest key and the biggest storyline with this trade is you got to protect the franchise quarterback.
You have to. And, they're going to be addressing some more needs because they have 34 as well. It'd be interesting to see what this cost them to move up with 9 spots, because they have 10 picks in this draft. And it'd be interesting to see what they have to use to what kind of ammunition they had to use to move up. But I had been told that if their player fell between 14 and 15, that they would move up and get them. And, those insider kind of tips were true.
He will join Mekhi Becton, who had a fantastic
he's
rookie
the most
season.
violent.
He's a guy that is certainly going to really help anchor that offensive line. I do want to go back though to the pick that we just saw, because I know you're really excited about Rashawn Slater.
Yeah.
You think that he is. It's interesting because it felt like Penei Sewell was just like leaps and bounds better, but he graded right on par with him as well.
Yeah, Slater's not as big, and we do have information before we get to him that the Jets will receive they get the 14th pick right now and a fourth rounder at 143. The Vikings get number 23 later in the first round. Third round picks, which are 66 and 86. So they gave up some assets to move up here to get a difference maker on the offensive line. Back to the offensive line with Slater. Again, 6'4", 308 pounds, a little undersized. The one thing that stood out, anybody will tell you, especially scouts breaking down tape, because he opted out last year, is what he did against Chase Young. That's how you match up, right? Chase Young went number 2 last year in the draft, but Slater is one of those guys that he's not going to bull rush you. He's going to beat you on angles.
Yep.
And you say yes. Like, what does that mean, at beating you in angles as an offensive lineman?
You always have to, that's what football is all about. Stand inside out, making sure that you're able to anchor. It's all about geometry, right? Making sure that you're underneath, inside hand wins, making sure that you're underneath, your helmet is lower than their helmet. And it's all about being able to do that. He does it, and it looks like it's something that's easy to do, but it's something that's very difficult to do as you have defenders that's always trying to change their inside leverage, outside leverage. You have to stay patient with inside. He stays patient, and he's violent. He has a strong punch, and he's super athletic. He has a bit of a mean streak.
Yeah, and you look at the family also. His dad played in the NBA for a lot of years. He comes from an athletic family. And talking to Northwestern head coach Pat Fitzgerald last week about him, he said, quote, he's a high-level athlete with a relentless work ethic, and he looks like he's floating in pass protection, and he's an amazing teammate that I nicknamed Clark Kent. And I'm like, why'd you nickname him Clark Kent? He said, you go in the weight room, he's got these goofy rec spec-looking glasses on, and on the back of on his shoulders, on the squad rack, he's throwing up a damn house. And his teammates are all going crazy, and you're looking at that Superman strength, but he looks like a nerd. And I talked to one NFL scout. He said, just turn on the Ohio State tape. Kevin, you just referenced this. One NFL scout said he took Chase Young's heart. Yep. Go back and watch in the second half where Chase Young lined up. Yep. It was on the other side of Slater. They actually made Ohio State move him to the other side.
That's exactly right. He played great in that game. That's when he got on the national stage. He was an effective, really great job of blocking Chase Young. And when you're evaluating offensive linemen, if you could defend and block Chase Young, you could play in the NFL.
And also bears mentioning that they did add Corey Linsley as well. Here's the Jets pick.
The 14th pick to the New York Jets. With the 14th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Elijah Vera Tucker, guard, USC.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
6'4.5", 308. Really strong, 36 reps, very athletic, did a really good job at left tackle where he was forced to play this year at USC. Up until that point, he had been that guard, left guard with some right guard experience. That's going to be his spot in the NFL. He could be the next Quentin Nelson. Certainly a guy like Zach Martin, that guard that will be a Pro Bowler and really elevate the play of your offensive line.
When Mel Kiper compares you to Nelson,
yeah,
that is saying a heck of a lot. And both you guys, Mike T and Bart, are shaking your heads in agreement.
Yeah, well, we talked about, they gave up 2 threes. They got back a 4, but, we talked about the offensive line being in big need to protect Zach Wilson. The thing I liked about Vera Tucker was he was strong. He was a good foot athlete. We saw him play both guard and tackle, and that's why I gave him a slight edge over Darrisaw. I like Darrisaw a lot. He reminds me of Russell Okung, but to have that sort of versatility is, especially when you're that strong, is something that Joe Douglas paid a big premium. But, hey, if you have 2 blue-chip guys in the offensive line now between Mekhi Becton and him, that's a great foundation.
And when you talk about being able to get into that zone stretch running game, you want a guard that can get on the track and get upside to that second level, be able to have a good punch to help his center get in front of the defender and get up to the second level and create those alleys.
This is what I love about the Patriots. Did you hear the chime? Bill's like, I'm not here for your 8 minutes on the clock BS. Our quarterback is sitting here. Let's go ahead and grab him. They still got over 7 minutes on the clock, and the chime is in.
Thank you, Bill.
The pick
First
is
time I
in.
ever said thank you to Bill.
Right, ever. The pick is in as we we say, again, thank you for joining us here on ESPN Radio, day one of the NFL Draft. Lots of intrigue all over the place, but Mac Jones having his Brady Quinn moment, sliding. Kevin, you said it. It just seems bananas that the Patriots would have had to have done absolutely nothing to still get a quarterback. We all thought they'd have to move.
Yeah, hey, look, you got to give them a ton of credit. I'm telling you, if I'm in that draft room, I'm on the phone with Denver. Everybody. I'm calling Carolina at 8. I'm calling Detroit at 7. Because if you know why? If Mac Jones turns out to be a great player, no one's going to criticize Mike Tannenbaum for giving up 2 twos to go get. Just like if Justin Fields turns out to be a great player, no one's going to say, you know what? Oh, Ryan Pace slightly overpaid. But boy, talking about being better to be lucky than good. Yeah. This will be the first time in a 26-year Hall of Fame career for Bill Belichick that he will draft a quarterback in the first round.
We are now also
on that kid, though.
Going to be in the teens here at 15. The first pick in the teens that was not a trade because the Eagles moved at 10, Bears moved at 11, Cowboys at 12. The Chargers at 13 did make their regular pick, and then the Jets switching with the Vikings. The commissioner is coming up to the podium, ready to announce the 15th pick.
Mac Jones.
The New England Patriots.
Appreciate it, Bill. Way to help us get home.
Don't overthink it.
With food insecurity a challenge for so many Americans, we've teamed up with Feeding America as part of Draftathon to help fight hunger. Don Cox, who's behind me, a former Marine, saw a need in his community and started providing food to fellow veterans. He and his team have provided more than 5.6 million meals in 10 different states through Food for Vets. Don, thank you for your service to our country and for helping those facing food insecurity. The stage is yours to make the Patriots pick. Go get him. With the 15th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the 6-time world champion New England Patriots select Mac Jones.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Well, back in August, he looked like a 5th-round pick. But then he emerged as an elite quarterback based on his level of consistency week in and week out, putting up great numbers even without Jalen Waddle. When Waddle got hurt October 24th, lost to center Landon Dickerson for the semifinal and championship game, yet he did not miss a beat. Accurate to all levels, supremely intelligent, highly competitive, and a winner. He has everything it takes as a pure pocket passer. If he's protected by his offensive line, same thing we said about Tom Brady coming out of Michigan. Protect him, and he'll get the job done.
The NFL Draft on ESPN Radio is brought to you by Goodyear. Aerial coverage provided by Goodyear, celebrating the endless pursuit of forward momentum. Goodyear, more driven. Giving you all the reaction on night 1 and night 2 of the NFL Draft. Bart Scott, Mike Tannenbaum, Kevin Negandhi, L. Duncan, Ian Fitzsimmons. Okay, we just said it. The Patriots get their guy, Mac Jones, out of Alabama, a guy that at some point we thought was maybe the 3rd best quarterback prospect. Appears was the 5th best quarterback prospect. Do you think that this is the right fit with Josh McDaniels and what the Patriots are currently doing?
Absolutely, because one of the things they will do is they will tailor their offense and tweak it to put their players in the best position possible. Now, look, he is nowhere near the athlete that Cam Newton is, and I'm sure he's going to sit behind Cam. We'll see more of those RPOs that we saw, some play actions off of some heavy run fakes. That will play to Cam Newton's strength. I think with Mac Jones, what you're going to see is what they did at Alabama. Maybe try to get him a little bit on the move the pocket for him, but he is deadly accurate, El. That is what the best thing he does is his intelligence, his processing, and his accuracy. Again, this one number to me is remarkable. They had 2,421 yards after catch. You have to have precision accuracy because it's not just about, hey, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. That is to have rare accuracy. And for all those years, what did you have in Tom Brady? You had precision, accuracy, and quick decision-making.
So the Cardinals are on the clock. You just heard the chime, so the pick is in. We will get to the podium when the commissioner walks out there. Just to recap here. Jacksonville Jaguars go with Trevor Lawrence. Jets at 2 go with Zach Wilson. The 49ers go with Trey Lance at number 3. Then we had to wait with the quarterbacks until the Bears moved up at 11 to draft Justin Fields. And then Mac Jones, the 5th quarterback, I don't think many expected that over the last 2 months. Goes to the Patriots at 15.
I just read his lips, and he said, "This is where I've wanted to go all along." So I'm very happy.
And you know what? That brings me to another conversation. The relationship that Bill Belichick has with Nick Saban players.
That's it. And Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are thicker than thieves. We all know how far back they go when Nick Saban was his defensive coordinator, when Bill Belichick was the head coach at Cleveland. And the first time I ever saw Mac Jones and heard his name, I'm covering Alabama spring game 3 years ago. And Nick Saban, and I heard him from the sideline, and TV caught it also with Herb Street and Joey Galloway standing behind Saban. Mac Jones takes the Alabama 2s against the Alabama 1s, goes 6 plays down the field, touchdown. Nick Saban is screaming, "Our bleeping backup quarterback just went 6 plays right down the field against our 1s. What is going on here?" When Hurts and Tua couldn't move the ball against the Alabama backups. Right then I looked at the depth chart and went, who the heck is 10? I'm writing that name down. And you talk to any Alabama coach, 3 words come up: competitor, winner, student. That's a common denominator when it comes to Mac Jones.
It's a cute story, though. But when you think, it's a cute story. But I want to go here all along. Be careful what you wish for, because we talk about how brutal the fans in New York can be. Well, Boston fans can get pretty rowdy too, because they expect excellence. And listen, you think about the division in which he's going in, a division that has Josh Allen, Zach Wilson now, and Tua Tagovailoa. And if you're the worst out of those, you're going to be held to a higher standard, and it can be tough.
But he won't be the worst out of those.
You don't think so?
You think it'll be Tua?
Yeah. Let's just look how they played. Tua had more weapons around him, and Mac Jones outplayed him.
Mac Jones does have some weapons. We're a reminder that the Patriots decided to sort of bolster that tight end group. We know how much they love their tight ends up there, getting Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, signing them to long-term deals at over $12.5 million apiece. It feels to me like this makes more sense. Mac Jones, being a bit of a statue, has more of the prototype of a Tom Brady, right, than he does necessarily a fit for San Francisco. So this feels very much like a Patriots move, and Mac Jones seems like a very Patriots guy to me. Again, the Cardinals pick is in. We're watching Commissioner Goodell walk up to the podium right now as we speak, Kevin. Any predictions here where we think the Cardinals are going to go, Mikey T?
I think corner.
Corner?
They got to replace Patrick Peterson.
They have no cornerbacks.
Desperate for corner.
They lost 2 corners, but it could also be a pass rusher.
With the 16th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Zaven Collins.
That's my dude!
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Zaven Collins is a beast. I mean, physically, you just look at him, and he has everything that you want. He's got the length, he's got the size, the physicality. He's a 3-year starter at Tulsa, and he dominated his level of competition. He's a dynamic player, and he's a versatile linebacker. And I love that about him. He can be an off-the-ball linebacker, but then you can push him over as a 3-4 outside linebacker and let him run loose going after the quarterback. So there's nothing that Zaven Collins can't do. That's why he's one of the premier linebackers in this class.
You heard this entire room break out because Bart Scott has been very high, and our boy Ian Fitzsimmons yesterday was talking about Zaven Collins. He is all over the place, an old school thumper. We're going to break down this pick and go, understand why these guys love the pick. That's ahead here. This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, presented by Sherwin-Williams.
You are listening to Round 1 of the NFL Draft here on ESPN Radio with Elle Duncan and Kevin Negandhi, alongside our front office insider Mike Tannenbaum, former player Bart Scott, Ian Fitzsimmons, who brings us all the great stories, the background from these players. We just got, as we await the Las Vegas Raiders pick, they've got about 2 minutes on the clock right now until their pick is in. We just got a pick from Arizona. They decided to go with Zaven Collins from Tulsa, the outside linebacker. And I love this, Kevin, because we have totally different opinions on how this guy is. Let's start with team love this pick. Bart, what do you think about his fit there in the desert?
I mean, when I was breaking down linebackers, this guy was the best linebacker that I've broken down. I think he's better than Parson. He doesn't run around blocks. He's big, he's strong, but he's agile. He's a good blitzer. He's a thumper, but also he's great in pass coverage, and he's Johnny on the spot. Like, the only guy I've ever been around that the ball just stuck to was Adelius Thomas. The ball just always bounced to him, always got tipped to him, and he was Johnny on the spot. This guy reminds me so much of Adelius as far as his ability for the ball to find him. And he reminds me of Bobby Wagner, too. He's a guy, we talk about how great Tampa was last year. It was because those linebackers were able to be not a liability in coverage that they were able to win the Super Bowl, and that's what Xavier Collins brings to the table.
We hear the chime. The Raiders pick is in. Just some real quick background on him. He's 6'4", 260 pounds, and when he was a kid, he was a champion gymnast. And Fitz, you love this pick. You were raving about him for a week.
When I saw him in person against SMU with Anish Shroff and Tom Luganbill, we all developed a man crush on 23 for Tulsa. And I can give you the full story after this pick because I think we're coming up right now. Is that right?
No, we're good.
Oh, we're good? Okay. So, sorry, I got somebody mayor. But I'll tell you the background on Zaven, the person. Comes from Little Hominy, Oklahoma. Played quarterback and safety. You mentioned he was a gymnast, also played baseball. I mean, and he was a choir boy as well. But when he got to Tulsa, and it was his only D1 offer, that was it. No, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, the Pokes didn't offer, Sooners didn't offer. He gets to campus. It's the first time he's had training. Phil Montgomery said, we had to back him off because he went from 215 to 240 in about 2 months. He would have had his hand in the dirt in a hurry if we didn't back him off quickly. He's all around the ball, 4 INTs. You're right, Bart. All this guy does is make plays. He made Arizona better.
And I'll tell you, Vance Joseph, someone I work with, loves versatility. He actually weighed as much as 270, Kevin. Had a pick 6 against Tulane. He has rare athleticism for his size.
With the 17th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Alex Leatherwood, tackle, Alabama.
Okay, so there we heard the reaction from Bart Scott in real time. I don't know if your mic was open. He said, what? That's a reach. The Raiders go for Alex Leatherwood. Why do you say that's a reach? You don't like the pick there?
I mean, listen, he's a talented player. I just think that Darrisaw still being there, maybe address a need. They definitely, I believe, should address maybe the safety position. I just didn't have him rated that high in the first round, but the Raiders have been unique in the last couple of years and taking guys a little bit early.
Yeah, so Leatherwood is the 5th Alabama player taken in the first 17 picks. And I don't think anybody's knocking Leatherwood. It's the placement at 17 to pick him at the value, right?
Kyle
and
Flood,
what you can get.
Kyle Flood, former O-line coach at Alabama, now at Texas. Steve Sarkisian poached him, and he went to Texas. He told me he's a first-round talent. He's just not a finished product yet. Special athlete that can run and block, but he needs a little more seasoning. That's from his former position coach.
Yeah, and he's played the last 2 years at tackle. I think he's probably more of a guard, at least initially. He is a good athlete. We got to remember that the Raiders lost 3 offensive linemen in the offseason. And several hours ago, presciently, you asked about, are we taking the best available player or are we taking the need? This, to me, I agree with Bart. This is the first time we could say they went need because there were better football players on the board. Christian Darrisaw, who's more of a traditional tackle.
Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah, Jalen Phillips, the pass rusher from Miami. There's some medical concerns on him, but Alex Leatherwood, I like him. I had him at the bottom of the first round, but this to me was, hey, we lost 3 offensive linemen. We got to replace them. And I think Leatherwood is not the tackle that Darrisaw is, but again, he has a little bit more versatility. I see him sliding into guard initially.
I do still, I wanted to because I teased it and I have to give the payoff that we had a little bit of a disagreement when it came to, I'm going to go back to Zaven Collins here because we've got 2 guys that love him. We heard from Ian and we heard from Bart. And then we've got a guy here next to me and Mikey T, Tannenbaum, who you think this is just a projection. You're not nearly as high on Zaven Collins.
Well, again, I think he is more of a projection. If I was looking through the lens of Arizona, Azeez Ojulari is a more natural pass rusher. Zaven Collins is more of a freak in terms of he's up to, one team had him at 270 pounds, and this was a guy that had a pick 6 against Tulane. I mean, he could really move in space. So my point is, if you need a pass rusher, even Kwity Paye from Michigan comes into that conversation. And if you want Zaven Collins, that's where you maybe pick up some extra picks the way the Vikings just did.
Yeah, but Isaiah Simmons is not a traditional inside linebacker. He doesn't see the box and the line like a great inside linebacker. So I think they have a traditional inside linebacker to play behind that great defensive line they're going to have.
Okay, you heard the chime there. The Dolphins, with their second pick in the first round, at number 6, they went with Jalen Waddle. Let's recap here for our audience. So Trevor Lawrence goes number 1 to the Jaguars. Zach Wilson goes number 2 to the Jets. Then Trey Lance to the 49ers at 3. Kyle Pitts to the Falcons. Jamar Chase to the Bengals. That created a nice conversation in this room. Jalen Waddle to the Dolphins at 6. Penei Sewell then going to the Lions at 7. J.C. Horn to the Panthers at 8. Patrick Surtain to the Broncos at 9. Moment there for L. Devontae Smith going to the Eagles as they moved up and made a trade with the Cowboys, 2 spots. Then Justin Fields goes to the Bears as they moved up in a trade with the Giants. And then the Cowboys land Micah Parsons. Rashawn Slater goes to the Chargers. Vera Tucker goes to the Jets. Mac Jones to the Patriots. Zaven Collins to the Cardinals. Alex Leatherwood to the Raiders. And now the Dolphins. The pick is in, and here's the commissioner at 18.
With the 18th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Phillips, defensive end, Miami.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Came out of high school as the number 1 recruit, goes to UCLA, has 3.5 sacks, but injuries really hindered his performance there. Ends up at Miami, and he has that one great season in 2020. Took over where number 15, Gregory Rousseau's old number, after Rousseau opted out, and he had a phenomenal season. 8 sacks, 15.5 tackles for loss. Here's a 6'5", 260-pounder with 4.56 speed, great athletic ability, and tremendous length. Best natural pass rusher in this draft is Jalen Phillips.
So we got a wild card here. This is a boom or bust pick. Yep. When you see him come off the bus, you're like, whoa, this guy looks great. Put the best-looking guys in the front of the bus. But at one point, Ian, he weighed 225 pounds. And then he medically retired at one point after leaving UCLA, revived his career at the U.
Well, UCLA DQ'd him, basically. Their medical doctor said, you can't play football anymore. So he goes to Miami. And I was actually talking to Hurricanes head coach Manny Diaz this morning about Jalen Phillips. And he said, look, he can do anything and everything you ask from an edge pass rusher. And asked about the injuries. He said, don't come to me about injuries. Every NFL team that has called me about Jalen Phillips, I tell them, go talk to UCLA. Because here, he was perfectly healthy. He had 4 practices in the spring, so they really didn't know what he could or couldn't do until they got him on the field. And he said once he was on the field, it was bam, just lighting guys up. But when you ask about injuries with Phillips, Manny Diaz will tell you, get the heck out of here with that. Go talk to UCLA.
It's interesting because this was my guy as like my sort of intriguing player to watch, just because I did like his story in terms of sort of the adversity. Mm-hmm. He gets the music itch, so he goes to Miami because they are, if you don't know, well known for their music program, and says, you know what, I actually kind of miss football. Jumps back in and then has 8 sacks in 10 games. So knowing that, right, knowing that there could potentially be a low floor, but also a high ceiling, and teaming him up with a guy like Brian Flores, how do you think he projects in Miami?
Yeah, well, look, if you hit on him, El, it makes a ton of sense from this standpoint. They lost Kyle Van Noy. They lost Shaq Lawson. They needed another pressure player in the front 7. Brian Flores has obviously done a very good job, defensive-minded head coach. The concussions, though, scare me because it's a very unpredictable injury. There were some concerns about his wrist. It's obviously an unusual story in terms of, what he's dealt with to basically retire from football at UCLA. But, give Miami credit. They had a volume of picks. If you're going to ever take a shot, this is the part of the round of the draft where you can start doing that, because if you're off on this, L, you can live to fight another day. But make no mistake about it, they're going to count on him this year because they've lost 2 players that were, at least for them last year, pretty productive.
But Bart, we said this 100 picks ago. They need help on the offensive line. So why not try and protect Tua Tagovailoa? He and Ryan Fitzpatrick were in the bottom 10 last year in terms of time allowed to throw. They need help there, so why not try to address it there?
Well, best players available, right? And
that's their approach.
And one of the strengths as well is that defensive backfield for them But if you don't have anybody that can put pressure on the quarterback, then that makes the great players that you have in Howard and I believe Brian Jones, right? That makes them not as effective. So if you want to be able to have it, you have to have somebody that can get after the pass rusher. They did invest 3 linemen last year in the offensive line. They're not done yet. Like as we see, a lot of these guys are dropping. They have enough draft capital to move up and be able to address the offensive line.
Phillips, by the way, blown away by this stat, is the first defensive lineman from the U drafted in the first round since Vince Wilfork in 2004. And they may get 2. Greg Rousseau may be drafted here in the first round as well. Just think about all the talent through the years at the U, and they haven't had a first-round pick on that defensive line since Wilfork in 2004.
Yeah, and going to the year, everyone had said it would have been Rousseau going way before Jalen Phillips. No one really knew who Jalen Phillips was, except that he was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. So it's a fascinating storyline.
Okay, and you mentioned the Dolphins and their picks, right? So they still have number 36 in round number 2 and 50 in round number 2. So they still have some action in the next couple of days here as we hear the chime with Washington on the clock and the pick is in.
The Washington football team, their pick is in. So while we wait that, let's talk their biggest need. We know that they need a quarterback, but it stands to reason they're not going to take that here, right? I thought maybe potentially they would blow up the draft and move up. They're not doing that. They definitely need some help at left tackle. I know we still have a couple of interesting prospects on the board there. Who would you say is your best available left on the offense, out of the offensive line? And I know we still have Darisaw and Tevin Jenkins still on the board.
Yeah, I see him just like that. And this really, if I'm Washington, this really lines up nicely in terms of their needs. I think Darisaw makes a ton of sense here. You have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who at this point in his career is not the most mobile guy. So if they could add another frontline tackle, which in my opinion I think Darisaw is, he reminds me a lot of Russell Okung because of his length. And when you look at their offensive line, Eric Flowers, I'm not a big fan of. They just traded for him. Morgan Moses is a functional right tackle. I think if I'm Washington, I'm doing backflips that Darisaw is available at this point.
And he was in your backyard, too, so you know him. And you've been able to watch him. If you're just watching local TV, you're able to watch him at Virginia Tech. So I think this is a no-brainer right now. You want to protect, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you went and invested in the offense. I mean, not the offense line, but the wide receiver position. But you got to give Fitztragic or Fitzmagic enough time to distribute the ball.
Hey, listen, this is a team, though, that won because of their defense. They won the division last year because of their defense. Yeah. And now it's, hey, Fitzmagic, don't lose games for us.
Sure.
With the 19th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Washington football team selects Jamin Davis.
Wow.
Linebacker, Kentucky.
Wow. Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Jamin Davis is one of my favorite players in this entire draft. I think he's so underrated. He's 6'3.5", 234 pounds. He ran a 4.47 at his pro day. I mean, that's wide receiver fast. And it shows up on tape because he can cover. He plays sideline to sideline as a run defender. He's long. He's got the ability to get after the quarterback as well. I just think he's a complete linebacker, and I think he's going to start right away for an NFL team. And I think he can do everything that you're looking for in today's NFL.
Okay, right.
That's a stunning pick.
I'm looking at your website. You had Jamin Davis out of Kentucky as your 14th rated linebacker. What are they doing here?
He should be higher than that for sure. He could run. He only started 11 games in his career. He had a really good game against Florida. But what's stunning to me is this: when we take a bigger picture look at Washington and all the capital they have in their front seven, it's just hard to believe that they're going to put more resources. When you're building your team, you almost have to look at it from a resource allocation standpoint. You need a left tackle. You have Darisaw say right there. Yeah. Jamin Davis was a guy that had a great offseason, and I think we have a tendency, at least I do, to really rely on the tape. He only wound up starting 11 games. Yeah. He tested better than he played. I think he's an interesting player, maybe in the middle of the second round, but to go into the season right now, and again, we have a lot of ways to go here, but you have Garin Christian as your left tackle if you're Washington.
Well, I had Jamin Davis going to Cleveland. I think Cleveland needs somebody at the second level that can run and keep up with Lamar Jackson. He was one of my favorite players that I broke down. Like I said, I don't watch a lot of the games. I just break down the tape. and he has everything you want. He has tremendous zone recognition, presence. He's a ball hawk as well. He can blitz, and he gets downhill. But I tell you what, I thought that maybe if they were going to go linebacker, that Jeremiah Owusu would have been a better fit, because he's a guy that you think that he's a better player at this point.
Bart Scott's Instant Analysis, brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, your professional parts people. So you have Jamin Davis here. And it feels like, guys, the last 4 picks after Mac Jones have been surprises. Zaven Collins going to the Cardinals. The Raiders going with Alex Leatherwood. Not a surprise that he went in the first round, just where he went. Jalen Phillips to the Dolphins at 18. And then the need did not feel like it's a need there for Washington and their defense with Jamin Davis. Fitz, what else could you tell us about Davis?
Well, he's a military kid. He carries that discipline to this day. When he joined Freddie Coleman and I last week, he said, early is late, accountability is reliability, leaders don't let friends or teammates fail. And I was like, yes, sir, Colonel. I mean, he is extremely disciplined. And when he got to Kentucky, he was only about 195 pounds. But when he got there, I mean, he truly blossomed and bought into everything that they were preaching. And here's my favorite part about Jamin Davis, off the field. When he joined Freddie Coleman and I, the white guy with a Southern accent was the only dude who wasn't a NASCAR fan.
Oh, wow.
Jamin Davis is also a gearhead. So, when it comes to just the person, the player, I like Jamin Davis personally. And he's also a ball hawk. You turn on the tape, 44 is picking, he's always around the ball and had a pick 6 against Tennessee.
Yeah, he's tremendous zone awareness. He has good hips. He can flip. He's fluid. He's explosive. He's a ball hawk.
I thought he kind of came on late, though, in his career. He was a bit of a developmental player. And again, I'm not questioning his athletic ability, but I'm just saying, when you look at the Washington team, I just don't think that's a big need for them. And you can't have so many players in your front 7 who are first-round picks. You can't pay them all. Some of them are going to leave. And again, if you have a chance to win, it's going to be based on Ryan Fitzpatrick playing high-level football. At his age, protecting him is job number 1.
Washington has now drafted 5 front 7 players, to your point, in the first round since 2017. That breaks a tie with the Niners for the most in the NFL over that span. But talking sort of more macro on the Washington football team, they won their division at 7-9. I understand that Ron Rivera knew he was inheriting a reclamation project, but he also inherited a team that was in the worst division in football last year. So based on what you're seeing right now, these moves that they're making right now, did Washington get better? Is Washington poising themselves to make another run at the playoffs, or with Dak returning, is sort of the hierarchy of the NFC East going to fall back to where it should have been all along?
Yeah, I think it's Dallas that draw a line. Now, with that said, I think they have an emergency at corner. I know they love Surtain, and I'm sure they would have been happy with J.C. Horn. Maybe they take a shot at Caleb Farley at some point, the talented but injured corner from Virginia Tech. But I think Dallas will be explosive on offense. I think Dak Prescott's one of the most underrated players in our league. I think Washington did a heck of a job with Ron Rivera, given the turnstile they had at quarterback.
Yeah.
But their left tackle is a massive hole for them.
Yeah, but, I mean, when I look at their linebacker core, John Bostic is getting a little long in the tooth. You think about where Rivera came from. He came from Carolina, where he had Kuechly and he had Thomas Davis. So I understand him wanting to address that position. He's also, 46 defense, Buddy Ryan. He believes in the linebacker being the leader on the team, and I think he got a good one. And they've done a good job with McLaurin, and I forget the kid that they brought from Carolina to pair him with this year. Who's the receiver from Carolina? I'll remember it after this.
The Giants pick is in. You hear the chime. Of course, they moved back in a rare move by Dave Gettleman with the Bears from 11 to 20. Is this where we see Kwity Paye go off the board here, Mike T? What do you anticipate with the Giants? Because they're in need of an edge rusher.
Yeah, I like Kwity Paye. I like Azeez Ojulari from Georgia. And to Dave Gettleman's credit, if they come out with one of those two players here, Kevin, they got the same player they probably would have taken at 11, got a couple extra picks. That's being a really great trade backer that Dave Gettleman's ever. In all seriousness, it's a really effective job by them.
What do you like about Azeez Ojulari? I like him a lot. He's my favorite pass rusher in the draft.
He has a good burst. I thought he had a good pad level. I thought he had a good lower body flexibility, which is really important as a pass rusher.
And you mentioned who the Giants got from the Bears. So they moved back 9 spots. They picked up the 164th pick. How about a first rounder next year and a 4th rounder next year? The Bears were desperate. and the Giants took advantage of it.
Unbelievable. The Giants pick is in. We're watching Roger Goodell go here. Again, everyone seems to think this is where they'll address the pass rush. Could it be Kwity Paye? Is he going to come off? They also need to address
With the
offensive line.
20th
Here's the
pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Kadarius Toney, wide receiver, Florida.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Mr. Excitement. Where's that number one? And he was all over the field making plays, catching the football, 70 receptions, 161 rushing yards, jet sweep, reverses, punt returner, kick returner. He can do it all, but what he has to do is stay healthy. He plays an aggressive style. He takes on defenders. He needs to live to fight another day. And if he takes care of that body, his all-around ability will make him a dynamic presence both on offense and on special teams.
Wow. And I think
stunning.
We're saying wow is where the pick went because Kadarius Toney was expected to go in the first round. But when you would look at fit, he's a straight playmaker. But, Mike T., let's start with you. You say stunning. Why?
Because the Giants have had trouble rushing the passer for the last several years. Leonard Williams has played well for them. They re-signed him. They franchised him. But nobody else in their front seven has really produced at any sort of consistency rushing the passer. And I'm a big Darius Slayton fan. I think he's an underrated player for the Giants. They gave Kenny Golladay tons of money. Evan Ingram, they list him as a tight end. He's another receiver.
Sterling Shepard.
Yeah. So they have tons of receivers. They could have gone offensive line because coming back is Nate Solder, who's been a disappointment. He opted out. And they need a pass rusher. And it's set up there. They had two guys in Kwity Paye and Azeez Ojulari. And if they went offensive line, Christian Darrisaw was there. So to me, this was an absolute reach. Kadarius Toney is to be a little bit of a gadget player. It's a luxury pick. And this was a team that had massive holes that they could have filled.
He's a son of a Navy veteran, broke 32 tackles on only 80 catches the past 2 seasons. And his dad would call him Cat because when you try to go pick him up, he'd run away. You could never grab him.
I like it. He's squirrely. He's squirrely, if you will. All right, we've got much more reaction coming up. We're actually going to hear from new Bears quarterback Justin Fields. Doesn't that sound a little bit strange? This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, presented by Sherwin-Williams. You are listening to the NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, but not with Keyshawn, with Bart Scott, Kevin Negandhi, L. Duncan, Mike Tannenbaum, Ian Fitzsimmons. We have currently the Colts on the clock at pick 21, so we'll bring that to you in just a little bit. The NFL Draft on ESPN Radio is brought to you by attorneys Cordell and Cordell, fair divorce for men. Call 1-866-DADS-LAW. So we are awaiting we're awaiting the Colts pick, right?
Yeah.
The pick is in. When it comes to the Colts, Bart, what do you think that they need?
Well, they need a pass rusher. They lost Justin Houston. They have to continue to build that defensive line. You know, it's a lot of options out there, but I like Azeez Ojulari. I think he's the most natural pass rusher right now. I love the way he bends. I love his versatility. But, they definitely have to address that position because, the loss of Justin Houston, if you can't get to the quarterback, they have everything else, and I think they're trying to make a run.
And the biggest news for the Colts in the offseason, acquiring Carson Wentz from the Eagles. So Frank Reich reunites with the former Eagle quarterback. They had the magic during that 2017 run where Reich was the offensive coordinator of the Eagles, and they went to the Super Bowl, a season that Carson Wentz could say, well, he was on his way to winning the MVP before tearing up his knee in Los Angeles. Fitz, let's bring you in here in this conversation. The previous pick was the Giants, and Kadarius Toney here, and while Bart's shaking his head, Kadarius Toney, I mean, he came to Florida with the idea of, I've got to get on the field, I'll do anything and everything, even though he has a background of playing quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you wanted to play teams. It didn't matter. Whatever you wanted him to do, he was going to do it. And Kyle Trask told me, quote, you can't cover him one-on-one. When he hits his brakes and bends his knees almost hit the ground. His hips get so low. Throw it anywhere in his zip code, he's going to go get it. It's a full trust that I have with him on a 50-50 ball. So the question about Kadarius, Bart, was also a little bit, off the field. And that's something that
send him to New York. That'd be great.
But as far as on the field, this young man is explosive. And when you hear your quarterback saying 50-50 ball, I trust him immensely. I'm just going to throw it and go get it. That's Kadarius Toney.
Let's talk specifically, though, about fit, though, right? Because Toney ran almost 80% of his routes from the slot in 2020. And you know who sucked at targeting slot receivers last year? Daniel Jones was terrible at that. So how do they sort of make this work considering what they're dealing with and working with Daniel Jones?
Yeah, Kadarius Toney is really well built from the waist down. He's strong. We talked about how he breaks tackles. I think what they're going to try to do is get long handoffs. So speed sweeps, a lot of behind the line of scrimmage plays. That really plays to his strength just in terms of what you watch, what they did in Florida. The other thing about Toney that I will say, he's very smart. They moved him around quite a bit.
With the 21st pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Kwity Paye, defensive end, Michigan.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
The first thing that jumps off the tape with Kwity Paye is his suddenness. He is a twitchy athlete. He is big, he's physical, he has all the tools you look for. I thought Michigan utilized him improperly. They dropped him too much in coverage. I love when he just goes up the field and gets after the quarterback. And the other thing that I love about Paye's game is the fact that he has a great motor, and he will chase down any running back and any quarterback, doesn't matter where it is on the field. And I just think that motor translates so well to the NFL.
So the pick is Kwity Paye. Read a great article about him. We love sort of some of these storylines coming into the draft. He was born in a refugee camp in Guinea. His mother fled to America with he and his baby brother when Kwity was very, very small. He landed in Providence, Rhode Island, where he talked about how he felt like an outcast growing up. Didn't know anything about football. Started playing at a boys and girls club, and here he is after becoming a star at Michigan, a first-round draft pick. Your thoughts on Kwity Paye now heading to Indianapolis?
This is a perfect fit. They haven't re-signed Justin Houston. They needed an edge rusher. He was a guy that was 1A to Azeez Ojulari, who's number one for me. But Paye is, as Todd said, a quick, twitchy, natural pass rusher. Incredible story. Track athlete in Rhode Island. You see that translate to his play speed. I think in terms of fit, value, and ability, this is a perfect pick. It makes a lot more sense to me than Kadarius Toney, a pick of luxury going to the Giants, a pick before.
Tell him why you mad, TV.
He's still bringing up Toney. He's like, back to Kadarius.
Sterling Shepard like, yo, where I'm playing at?
Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram. You got a gadget player who's like short and tough. I get it. He's like Santana Moss, but gosh, that's why Chris Ballard is one of the best general managers. When you think about what the Colts have done, they've rebuilt their lines. We talked about earlier, could Vera Tucker be as good as Quentin Nelson, who's probably the best offensive lineman in the league? Last year they gave a one for DeForest Buckner. Now they add another first-round pick. If Carson Wentz comes back to, and you know how good he could be, Kevin, to anywhere close to what he was, this is a really good football team.
I will say this. In year one, Carson Wentz will be in the MVP conversation halfway through the season.
I'm with you.
I cannot tell you what he's going to be like in year two, but in year one, he will be in that conversation. Kwity Paye, Todd talked a little bit about it. He wasn't used properly at Michigan.
Right.
There was one description that only I think you can break down for us, Bart. They describe them as having violent hands.
Yes.
What does that mean for all of us to understand violent hands as a defensive guy?
Yeah, if you put your hands on me, I'll show you. It's about active hands as well, violent hands, punching inside. When you put your hands up, chopping your wrist, getting up underneath your pad level. It's about violent hands. Getting blocked is not the crime. Staying blocked is. So you have to be able to disengage. You got to be able to punch. You got to be able to get your hands inside. And if you don't get your hands inside, and the offensive lineman get it there first, you reset and you get your hands back inside.
The other aspect about Kwity Paye, I talked to one NFL scout that said that had a high first-round grade on him, meaning top 10. I talked to another one that had a low second-round grade on Kwity Paye. So, Mike T., how much of that is trying to evaluate these guys during a pandemic?
Yeah, Ian, that is a great point and something we should be certainly talking about as we get into later tonight and certainly into tomorrow. And let's face it, there's going to be such discrepancy. We've already seen it with the quarterbacks. Apparently, Kyle Shanahan, it was a coin toss between Mac Jones and Trey Lance, and then Jones falls another 12 spots to New England. And Kwity Paye, I could see that going back to what these guys have said about how he was being used, but knowing that he was a track athlete in high school, you could see the twitch on the field. You could see, again, his use of hands. So even though maybe his production wasn't there, if Jalen Phillips is healthy, I would take Phillips, but I think Kwity Paye's attributes put him into this bottom in the first round. If you're evaluating him, Ian, on just production, I could see him being maybe a 40 to 50 player.
Paye played in just 4 games last year. He ranked second, however, in the FBS in pressure percentage, and you're talking about a Colts team that didn't have any of that and need to replace Justin Houston, which is interesting. You mentioned they need to replace Justin Houston, and then, Mikey T, you guys have as your comp to Kwity Paye, Justin Houston. Yep. You think that he will be able to sort of step in and help bolster a Colts defense that was very good last year?
Yeah, and again, to Ian's point, I think it bears repeating. This is an attributes pick. This is a pick that, as Bart said, you can see the twitch, you can see the violence. Yeah. He just hasn't done it much. But if you're Chris Ballard, it fills a need.
Really quickly, for the people that are listening at home that aren't quite as inside football, explain what you mean when you say twitch. You guys keep saying twitchy, twitch. Explain what you mean.
Twitchy Sutton. Okay. Right? It's zero to, it's like a Tesla. Anybody out there that's driving a Tesla and they know they'll have to go through a regular engine, it's Sutton. It's twitchy. It's
Ian
quick.
said, not me.
I got a Ram Dodge Laramie pickup truck.
Let me give you a better
plotting. As far from a Tesla as it comes.
Let me give you a better example of twitch. Rex Ryan jumping over Bart Scott at 12:01 when Bart became a free agent. That's quick twitch. That's explosive. That's use of hands.
Inside, of course, our draft room here as ESPN Radio continues in round 1 of the NFL draft. Kevin Negandhi alongside L. Duncan, Mike Tannenbaum, our resident GM, our defensive stars, Bart Scott and Ian Fitzsimmons with the breakdown of some of the college players, the best in the game. He's been around the game for years, and I love his nuggets. Just to recap here, at least in the last 5 picks, the Raiders at 17 went with Alex Leatherwood. The Dolphins with Jalen Phillips. Washington goes with Jamin Davis. The Giants, the surprise in the room here with Kadarius Toney at 20. The Colts going with Kwity Paye. And now you just heard the sound. That is the Titans on the clock. And the Titans, they're looking for an edge rusher, right?
Corner, though, as well.
They lost a couple of corners. They lost
Caleb Farley. I mean, at what point does the talent just trump the back injury?
One thing you brought up that I found interesting, the Ravens are sitting there on the back end of the first round at 27 and 31. Why are they laughing?
They saying, listen, I still got pass rushers there. I got Durashaw still sitting there that was right up the road. How funny would that be to get everything you got back from Orlando Brown Jr. and have an opportunity to replace him?
Tennessee could go a lot of different areas.
Pass catcher.
They blew it on Isaiah Wilson. He was a 1 last year that they already cut. They need a pass receiver. They lost Corey Davis. They blew it on Isaiah Wilson. They need another pass rusher, and they lost a couple of corners. So even though they signed Janoris Jenkins, they could go a lot of different areas here.
Isn't he like 50? How old is Janoris Jenkins around his time?
He really feels like we've been talking. Yeah, he's been around.
Isaiah Wilson, first round pick, played 3 plays.
Yeah.
Right? And then traded to the Dolphins.
And they got cut by the Dolphins.
Right.
Yeah. And he went to the same high school as Brian Flores. So you think if Isaiah Wilson could have made it, it would have been in Miami. They had nothing in on him, and they let him go. And Isaiah Wilson was a guy, and you've mentioned this for several hours, do you take the best player or the need? They had lost Jack Conklin in free agency to Cleveland. They drafted Isaiah Wilson as a guy, hey, we'll just plug him in. That's what happens when you reach.
Here's the commissioner with the Titans pick at 22. Commissioner working the photo op on the big stage with the Titans fan. Here we go.
Sweet Caroline.
That was good. With the 22nd
Still
pick
booing.
in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Caleb Farley, defensive back, Virginia Tech.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Caleb Farley is the best man-to-man cover corner in this draft. He is smooth. He has loose hips. He's oily. He can turn and run. And what I love about his game is the fact that he knows when to read the receiver's eyes or their body movements and to go and turn his head and go look for the football and go make a play. He's a former wide receiver in high school who eventually got moved to cornerback, but I think this guy is going to be a star. He's going to drop a little bit in the draft just because of the back injury, but if he's healthy, and you told me he's going to be healthy for 10 years, I think he's got a chance to be the best corner in this entire draft class.
Many people echo that sentiment. Could be a top-tier talent. Some concerns, 2 back surgeries, and a lack of tape after opting out. We'll get the reaction from Caleb Farley heading to Tennessee in just a minute. Coming up, reaction to that. You are listening to the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, presented by Sherwin-Williams. Stick around.
This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app.
Well, we got a pick in. Give us a second. We'll get to it. We now pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio. So the Vikings and their pick is in. We will get to the podium in Cleveland when the commissioner walks across the big stage. In the meantime, let's talk about and let's react to Caleb Farley. When we had the breakdown after the pick from Todd McShay, he called him the best cover corner in this draft, but he wasn't the first corner taken. Kevin Negani alongside L. Duncan, Mike Tannenbaum, as well as Bart Scott and Ian Fitzsimmons here. A lot of medical concerns when you're talking about Caleb Farley, who unfortunately could not attend the draft as he deals with COVID, but there's some questions about his back here, Mike T.
Yeah, and so we talked about this a little bit. I'm sure we'll get into a lot more tomorrow. Not all opt-outs are created equal. He's had 2 back surgeries on the exact same spot of his back. That's concerning, and he didn't play. Now, when you look at it from the Titans' perspective, they did sign Janoris Jenkins, which we talked about, but they did lose 3 corners. Adoree Jackson, Malcolm Butler, and Desmond King. When you lose 3 players at one position, it's going to cause you to reach. My question would be, guys, given the fact that you missed last year on Isaiah Wilson, we all have had our misses, but do you go with maybe someone like Greg Newsome, who's less of a risk? Maybe not the upside of Caleb Farley, but at least you know you have a solid player in Newsome. I just think it's really hard to recover to miss on 2 first-round picks back-to-back. I'm not saying they're going to miss on Farley, but if the 4 of us, the 5 of us fits, we're having a conversation in 6 months, and we see, and I hope I'm wrong when I say this, Caleb Farley on IR, Caleb Farley on PUP, I don't think any one of the 5 of us would be surprised.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't become D. Milliner if he can't stay healthy, have all these surgeries in college, get to the pros, and can't stay healthy as well. But, when he's arguably the best at the position, I think it's kind of worth the risk. No risky, no bisky, right? That's how we're rolling right now.
I was told that the second surgery, though, was a cleanup on the first one.
Okay, so that's less concerning because I keep seeing things that are like, GMs are saying they would rather deal with a knee injury than someone with a habitual back issue. The pick is in for the Minnesota Vikings. They traded down to number 23. A reminder, they still have Kirk Cousins, but they need someone to protect him. Is that what this pick is? Yeah. Let's see. Roger Goodell.
With the 23rd pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Christian Darrisaw, tackle, Virginia Tech.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Christian Darrisaw has all the physical tools that you look for. He's 6'4.5", 322 pounds. He has long arms, 34.25-inch arms, and he's mobile for his size. That's what I love about him. When you watch him on tape, he can mirror and slide, and he can get on the second level as a run blocker as well. So I think Darrisaw comes in. He's an NFL starter right away, plug and play. And Darrisaw, to me, will only continue to get better as he continues to get more game experience coming off of 3 years as a starter at left tackle at Virginia Tech.
So Christian Darrisaw, his pre-draft process wasn't great. He is coming off core muscle surgery. But when you looked at the tape, Mikey T, what did you think stood out to you about Darrisaw?
This guy was an absolute natural pass-protecting left tackle. Reminded me a little bit of Russell Okung. Todd mentioned it. I like the long arms. I like the lower body flexibility. I thought he used his hands really well. And when we talk about teams being built in the model of their head coaches, when you think about Mike Zimmer, you think about toughness, pass rushers, but you think about great offensive line play. They lost Riley Reif. Now, this is a really good job by Rick Spielman, guys. Pick up a couple of picks from the Jets, a couple of third-rounders, and you get a guy that should start from day one at left tackle. We got to give Minnesota a lot of credit for how they just managed the last couple of hours.
I mean, I think like last year, you couldn't go wrong with picking any three of these tackles. I thought they were a little bit pretty much interchangeable, and I thought he was the best of the pass protectors because I thought he didn't rush. He's patient, and sometimes it almost looks like he's in cruise control when he's kind of striding down the field. But I mean, he's a complete tackle, and day one, he's definitely a starter.
He's a soft-spoken young man out of Virginia Tech. Only one FBS offer, and it came from the Hokies. Very mature from the moment he saw time as a true freshman, and then once he was in, he didn't come back out.
Yeah, and he went to Fork Union Military Academy because he had to get his grades up coming out of high school, and he told us last week when he joined Freddie Coleman and I needed more discipline into my life, and I got it, and a tremendous foundation at Fork Union. And Fork Union, by the way, is a place where guys like Eddie George also went to play. And he said, my room and my locker to this day are pristine. I used to hate watching film after going to Fork Union. I love watching film. That's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. And when I asked him about what he likes about playing ball, Bart, you'll love this. He goes, I love the room. I love playing for the boys. That's it. Bottom line.
I'm interested, though. The Vikings are really an interesting sort of study in the disparity between their run blocking, which was really good, the best, right, last year, and their pass protection, which was not the best. In fact, they were down 26 in terms of pressure rate. What does that signal when you've got somewhat of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde O-line?
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier to run block when you have someone as explosive as Dalvin Cook. You could just engage contact for him. He's so quick and explosive, you don't have to hold your block very long. Kirk Cousins, they love that. He's so much more productive off of that heavy play action, and you have to hold your block a lot longer. But Darrisaw, to me, is a big upgrade over Riley Reif.
Okay, now we are going to pick number 24. The Steelers have a ton of holes.
Running back.
Especially on their offensive line. Here's the commissioner.
It's too many deep running backs.
Najee Harris?
Najee Harris. Right
Too many deep.
24th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft.
Center.
The Pittsburgh Steelers select Najee Harris, running back, Alabama.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Najee Harris is a 235-pound back who didn't always run like a 235-pound back. But this past year, he became more physical and aggressive, and Nick Saban loved that about him. And then talking to Steve Sarkisian, the offensive coordinator formerly for Alabama, he wanted to get him more involved in the passing game, and that's what happened this past year. And he caught the ball so well. He adjusted to throws outside of his frame, and he showed the ability to create after the catch. And that makes him, in my opinion, a 3-down back in the NFL.
The Steelers had the fewest rushing yards and lowest yards per rush in the league last season. It was a glaring and obvious weakness. They could also use some help along the offensive line. What do these guys think about that pick? We will tell you coming up. And the Jaguars are back on the clock. They've taken Trevor Lawrence, who will be joining him in Jacksonville. This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, presented by Sherwin-Williams.
NFL Draft on ESPN Radio continues. El Duncan, Kevin Negandhi with you, Mike Tannenbaum, Bart Scott, and Ian Fitzsimmons. And the Steelers just made the pick, and every single mock draft that we saw for months had the Steelers going with Najee Harris, and they went with Najee Harris as the Steelers make that selection of another Alabama player. That is 6 Roll Tide players taken in the first round, tying the University of Miami in 2004 is the most all-time, and we still have plenty more picks to go in this first round.
And Kevin, I don't like this pick for a number of reasons. You have an aging quarterback who's not nearly as mobile as he once was in Ben Roethlisberger. Villanueva, their long-time left tackle, is not signed. Marquise Pouncey, their longtime center, has retired. You had a couple of players there, Tevin Jenkins, somebody that I know Bart likes a lot, Oklahoma State, Landon Dickerson. He's had a number of injuries, but he's a frontline center, and there's a ton of running backs. So when you look at trying to look at this from a strategic planning standpoint, I love Najee Harris as a player, although from a pass receiving standpoint, I think it's still a work in progress. I like Travis Etienne from Clemson better, and probably Javonte Williams is very close for me with Najee Harris. So when you look at that offensive line, I'm worried if I'm a Steeler fan because how are you going to protect a very stationary Ben Roethlisberger?
Yeah.
In particular, because as you said, they do definitely need some offensive line help. And let's be real, like a running back is only as good as his offensive line. So we'll see sort of what he inherited. Ian, what can you tell us about Najee?
Well, the first time I talked to him was after Alabama won the national championship in overtime when not one, not two, but three true freshmen helped Alabama beat Georgia in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta. It was Devontae Smith, Tua, and Najee Harris. He finally got some burn in the second half. And when I asked him about finally getting some touches, he said, it's about bleeping time. Live here on ESPN Radio. And he's cocky. He's not confident, right? I mean, he's cocky, and he'll let you know it. One coach described him to me as a bit of an enigma. But, man, I'll tell you this, Mike, I think he can tote it, block it, and catch it. He set an SEC record for touchdowns. He did something Bo Jackson and Herschel Walker hadn't done. Now, I'm not comparing. I'm just giving an example.
But Fitz, aren't you concerned about their offensive line?
Oh, absolutely. You know, but they need O-line and running back. But I'm with you. Would I have taken Najee here? No. Would I have gone O-line? Because if you can't block it, you can't run it or throw it. And they were 28th in pass pro and about the same in run blocking. So I understand where you're coming from, Mike. But as far as the player goes, Najee is a complete back.
Yeah, you always have to ask yourself when you're making that pick, how much farther is the next player in this position? Like, I think it's still a lot of good running backs left. You're going to start running thin when it's time for you to pick again for tackle, right tackle, whatever you want to call it. You know, Jacksonville's up on the board. I'm calling our first safety. We have no safeties taken off. This is interesting. You know, around the 20s is when usually the safeties come out. Ed Reed was one of the most famous ones I remember in Baltimore, I believe, at pick 23.
Okay, so some background on Najee as well. You gave us a little bit of how he was at college. His nickname was Baby Huey. Youngest of 5 kids. He moved around a lot as his family tried to find stability on the West Coast. I always thought that, the backstory with him, especially in college, he had a pretty cool relationship with Megan Rapinoe, the soccer star.
Yeah.
Where she does her celebration after scoring a goal with her arms out.
Leaping.
He started doing that, right?
Yeah,
and then the leap, right?
The leap, we're calling the college football playoff semi at the Cotton Bowl, and he leaps over a Notre Dame defender, and that was for Megan Rapinoe.
She tweeted about it.
Rapinoe said, leap over someone for me, and as only Joe Test called it, and it was 54 magical yards by Najee Harris with a leap over a Notre Dame defender.
I'm going to be like Bart right now. Yeah, that's a cute story, but he better not be leaping in no NFL.
Again, we end up like Don Beebe, fall on that C7 vertebrae.
Hey, Kevin, you like that? We got Fitzy impersonating Joe Tessitore, and we got L impersonating Bart.
Gotta love it. Roger Goodell now with the Jacksonville's pick at 25, sitting in the chair. He's so cool.
Ain't that the chair he had
in
last
the
year?
2021 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Travis Etienne, running back, Clemson.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Travis Etienne is a rarity. You don't see guys that are this decorated come back for their final year, and that's exactly what he did. He wound up with 518 carries, and he was durable throughout his entire career. But what he did was improve upon his game. I thought he was a second or third round pick coming into the year, and now he should be a late first, early second round pick because he got stronger in his lower body and he caught the ball so well. He's competitive, he's tough, he's just become a complete player, and that's why Clemson loved him, and that's why NFL teams are going to want to bring him on.
So a reunion, a Clemson reunion. We now have Jamar Chase reuniting with his former quarterback in Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. We've got Jalen Waddle reuniting with Tua down in Miami. And now we've got Travis Etienne back with Trevor Lawrence. But this did not feel like a need. Are you surprised by this pick?
I am, and here's why. They have so many other needs on this team. We talked about the offensive line. They're going with Cam Robinson, who has been a very disappointing player. Mm-hmm. You have Trevor Lawrence, who's now, everything about him is protected. Look at the job that Joe...
Meyer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the job that Joe Douglas did. He trades back up for Vera Tucker to protect Zach Wilson. And I love Etienne. I would have taken him over Najee Harris, but to me, this was a little bit of a luxury pick. I love the fact that he's reunited, obviously, with his college teammate, but boy, I just thought they could have gone a lot of different ways. And remember, like, James Robinson was one of the better stories of the NFL last year.
Yes, he was a great running back last year.
Yeah.
So, interesting backstory, too, with Etienne. He's a quiet kid, and he's a country kid. He says eventually he just wants to have some cattle, livestock, chicken, horses, and all kinds of foreign animals. That's all he wants, right? He's from Jennings, Louisiana. One of the things that I always found curious was he loved his time at Clemson because Trevor took the spotlight away from him, and he didn't have to deal with, all the questions of being in a major program. And now it gets carried over in Jacksonville where he doesn't have to worry. And I find that really interesting, but it felt more of a luxury pick here for a team that has a bunch of holes.
If I'm Robinson, I thought they would go safety. I thought we'd see our first safety off the board, and they need help there as well. The Urban Myers is the first, glitch, and him developing, and because I'm sure, you know how it is. It's the newlywed phase, right? So he's able to have a little bit more influence this year than he'll ever have, and he went with Etienne. He has Carlos Hyde, and he already has the kid Robinson from last year. How many running backs you need, bro?
Yeah, and despite signing Rayshon Jenkins from the Los Angeles Chargers, I thought safety was a need. Trevon Moehrig from TCU is a really good player. Yes, he was sitting right there. And again, you have to look at the depth. There's really good running backs. Bart, you talked about Javonte Williams.
Carter.
Yeah, Michael Carter from UNC as well. But to me, you could go and get a running back, maybe even trade back and get Travis Etienne. And certainly offensive line, it just bears repeating, they have a poor offensive line for Trevor Lawrence right now.
So much for the idea that there's no premium on running backs, at least when it comes to Jacksonville. They've now taken a running back in the first round twice just since 2017 between Leonard Fournette. That didn't work out well. And now with Travis Etienne, and to your point, last year they had an undrafted rookie rush for 1,000 yards. It didn't feel like a need. The pick is in. You heard the chime. The Cleveland Browns picking at 26. When you sort of look at what you think Cleveland needs, where do you think they're going to go here, Bart?
D-tackle.
Okay.
They either D-tackle or linebacker. They have to figure out a way to stop Lamar Jackson and getting the ball ran up and down their throat, being able to get the ball back to that potent offense. I think they have to definitely go that direction.
Yeah, I think it's also a pass rusher when you look at the fact that Clowney signed a one-year deal. Terrace McKinney, that's a lottery ticket. He didn't work out in Atlanta. So they need a formidable pass rusher on the other side. Myles Garrett. So
Christian Barrymore.
Yeah.
Christian Barrymore, you need that interior pass rusher.
Ojulari is a guy that you
I love him, but you have Clowney, you have the most expensive pass rusher in the game right now.
Clowney's on a one-year deal.
No, I understand that, but I think you need Lamar Jackson. You need somebody that can run in the alleys.
Yeah,
right. They can't stop Lamar. All this zone read, RPOs type of stuff.
When it comes to best available between linebacker and defensive line, who do you think, in terms of just overall best fit, do you have someone you think is your best available right now?
Yeah, I would go with Azeez Ojulari.
Okay.
That would be the guy. And the other one is, interesting player from Notre Dame, Owusu Koromoa.
Oh, yeah.
He's a little bit of a hybrid player.
All right. We, in very true Browns fashion, he's got a pumpkin on his head. Commissioner Goodell is walking to the podium right now. Pick 26 from the Browns is in, and let's listen in.
The pandemic revealed the depths of the digital divide for underserved students across the country. We have partnered with the Education Trust as part of Draftathon to bridge the divide. Maya Tumoto and her class at Shaw High School here in Cleveland have faced this challenge during remote learning. She has worked overtime to assist other students, not only preparing and distributing computers, but teaching other students how to use them. I'm proud to introduce Maya to make the Cleveland Browns pick. Go get him, Brown.
What's up, Cleveland? Are y'all ready for this? All right. Are you guys ready for the best in the land with the 26th pick for the 2021 NFL Draft? For the Cleveland Browns, we have Gregory Newsome II.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Here's a guy who gradually this year kept moving up the draft board. Only had one career interception against Wisconsin in 2020, but 9 pass breakups, really impressive in coverage. Go back to 2019, led Northwestern and second in the Big Ten with 11 pass breakups. Has a basketball background, really smart kid with real good length. Ran 4.38 at his pro day. You're talking about a 6'1", 190-pounder who's smooth, athletic, and gets the job done in man coverage.
I love this pick. I'm just going to say that straight up, especially at this time at 26. Newsome, keep this in mind, coming out of Northwestern, 2005 is the last time a player that came from Northwestern went on to become a first-rounder. They've got 2 in this draft with Slater and now Newsome. Fitz, this background of this young man, he wants to face the best player every single game. He does not back down.
Every snap, Kevin. When I talked to Pat Fitzgerald, head coach at Northwestern, last week about him, he referred to him as a zero-maintenance corner. He's livid when he gives up at a completion in practice, but savvy enough to turn it loose, especially in a game, and he loves to hit. I asked him about playing special teams, and he said, are you kidding me? Your brother, for people who don't know, my brother's the assistant special teams coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals. He said he would love this guy. Unlike those 5-star cats, you can hear Pat Fitzgerald saying it, right? Like Surtain and Caleb Farley and J.C. Horn. My guy was a 2-star, a nothing. He'll play special teams. He'll play every single down. He just loves to play football. You can't get him off the field. And he actually said, I've had several NFL head coaches call me after speaking with Greg to tell them, when you get another one like Newsome, call me immediately. That's the impression this young man has made on NFL head coaches.
They help a secondary, too, by the way, that allowed 15 touchdowns on passes, 15-plus yards downfield. And they lost a ton of veterans, too, in Terrence Mitchell, Kevin Johnson, Carl Joseph, Andrew Sendejo. So what do you think about this move?
Yeah, I hate to eviscerate Fitz's,
he's a cute story. Hit him with that.
Yeah. Now
goes back to this is an annual occurrence here.
Yeah, every time with Fitzy.
Yeah, I hate to have facts get in the way of a good story here, Fitzy. But how about this? He only played in 7 games when they won. That's how much he's been hurt. Like, it's unbelievable. I mean, I got the whole list of, he had 6 games and 387 snaps this season, and that's just not enough. And again, we're talking about the rigors of a 17-game season. When you look at him, he is slight build, and he's been hurt 3 different times.
He likes to hit. Wait when they play the Ravens. He go when Patrick come around at 304 pounds, we gonna see how much he likes.
That's right. Yeah, when he has to defend the perimeter run. So I love him. Him and Farley are very similar to me. Like, they have elite man-to-man skills. Yeah. They're high character, but they're not durable, and they're not built to last, and that's why they were available where they were, and that would be a big concern of mine if I was Cleveland.
You love this pick, Bart.
No, I love his transition. I love him getting in and out of breaks. I love his redirection, his change of direction. I love how he competes for the football. And I think this was a position of need, right? You talking about the Ravens are trying to beef up their passing game. You think about the Steelers, how potent their passing game it was. That's the best thing they did last year. You got to have not one corner. You got to have 2, and it allows those pass rushers to work.
And you mentioned the Ravens. They've got 2 first-round picks. The first of them right now, you hear the chime. We will get to the commissioner when the announcement is made. Just to recap here over the last 5 picks. Caleb Farley went to the Titans at 22. Christian Darrisaw went to the Vikings at 23. Najee Harris went to the Steelers at 24. Travis Etienne went to Jacksonville, the Jaguars at 25. And now Greg Newsome going to the Browns. In the meantime, one of the big stories of the night is the Bears, moving up from 20 to 11 because they saw their quarterback. He was available, and it was Justin Fields. He talked to Maria Taylor.
What was the moment like when you finally got the call?
It was great. Definitely a moment that I'll remember forever. That glad that I got to celebrate my family. So I'm just, glad to be here. Chicago Bear.
I love it. I feel like no one has dealt with more scrutiny than you, Justin Fields. So now that you know where you're going, Chicago Bears, you can talk to all the fans. You can talk to the organization. What do you want them to know about the QB that they're getting?
They're going to get a hard worker, a guy that's going to put himself out there to win every game. A leader on and off the field. So I'm just excited and ready to work.
One of my favorite things is your dad, Pablo Fields, says that you were uniquely made for this. You were built for this moment. What about your journey has made you ready to start in a professional football league?
Just everything I've been through. Everything, me and my family have been through, I feel like, we've just learned from that. We've grown from that. So I think, whatever's, I guess in my path in the near future, I'll be ready for it.
So there it is, Justin Fields, officially a Chicago Bear. Chicago fans must be feeling good that at least they understand the front office addressed the idea that they could not start the season with who they currently had on the roster. Do you think that Justin going to Chicago in any way changes the hierarchy of the NFC North?
Well, what's interesting is, I guess my question, Elle, would be is, who are the 4 starting quarterbacks on opening day in the NFC North?
Sure.
8 hours ago, I think we all would have said Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay.
We don't know.
We don't know. Detroit, presumably, it's going to be Jared Goff, even though he may not be their quarterback of the future. Minnesota, to me, is always a solid team. Kirk Cousins has a ceiling, in my opinion. I like Justin Fields. He's very intriguing. We know that Chicago has that really good defense. Allen Robinson, we'll see if they can work something out long-term. And they have a couple good running backs. So if Justin Fields plays right away, which, again, we got to temper our expectations as we did a year ago. If no off-season program, we don't know if we're going to have preseason games yet. COVID is still around, and we don't know how that's going to impact the development of these rookie quarterbacks.
But we know he brings a different element. He can run the football, right? He can throw the ball, but he can run the football. So even if things break down, you can have a very tight game plan, much like we had for Mark Sanchez, much like we had with Joe Flacco. I've been to 2 AFC championships with 2 rookie quarterbacks, and it's because of the running game.
And here we go. The Ravens pick is in at 27. Again, they're going to pick at 31. They need a receiver. We're going Rashad Bateman here?
We got to replace Orlando Brown first. So I don't know.
Okay, Miss Cleo, you've been right this far.
With the 27th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Rashad Bateman, wide receiver, Minnesota.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
2019 year was phenomenal for Rashad Bateman. He was one of the dynamic receivers in the country. This year, with COVID affecting the season the way it didn't perform up to the level expected. Then he got a pro day where at 190 pounds, a little less than you thought he'd be around 200, but at 190 pounds, ran 4.39. You thought maybe 4.5 to 4.55. That 4.39 wowed people over. He was a guy who I think with his route running, his great hands, his competitive approach, his professional approach, I think he has a chance to be a number 1 receiver like a Michael Thomas type in the NFL.
That's a comparison, Michael Thomas, I would say. So there is Rashad Bateman is headed to Baltimore, where it's a team that, like, if you watch the Ravens, you almost think they hate receivers based on sort of how they have built their offensive system.
Well, he's big enough. He's going to be blocking. He's going to be up there stalk blocking. So you got him and Sammy Watkins. I hope Sammy Watkins got some insoles. I hope he's gelling right now.
Where do you think he projects?
You know what's so interesting about this? Leading up to the draft, we have all these pre-draft press conferences, and about 2 weeks ago, Eric DeCosta, who I like, general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, says he's insulted that somebody would ever question that we would take a receiver in the first round because we have great receivers. They're insulted, and I'm insulted. Yeah, they're insulted until they get, and you guys made a great call. I'm not as big a fan because I don't care if he ran 4.39, 4.41. I just don't see the play speed. I don't see the separation. That's why I don't see him as a first-rounder. But as Bart well knows, he is tough. He is big. If you're going to play for John Harbaugh, you can play in this offense where they do so much with the quarterback has the ball in his hands, where they have direct runs for the quarterback, a lot of perimeter plays, be it run, behind the line of scrimmage passes. Bateman can do all those jobs well.
Bart, you brought up an interesting point that they still need to get an offensive lineman. They're there at 31. Do you think this pick was made with Bateman at 27 because the Packers are there at 29 looking for a wide receiver?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I think their contingency plan was maybe Terrence Marshall. If they couldn't get him, because they need a type of receiver, right? And that's why they couldn't get a lot of receivers in the offseason because they was like, listen, I'm not about to be out here stalk blocking all day, man. It's only going to be the ball's going to be in the air maybe 20 times. So they figure they can probably go get the offensive lineman with the dressed and losing Orlando Brown Jr. You got Stanley coming back. And, now this allows maybe Hollywood Brown, who's really slight, to play in the slot. So if Sammy Watkins, you have 2 guys over 6 feet that can stalk block on the outside that's bigger, that should be able to take advantage of smaller corners, you can put Hollywood Brown off the ball in the slot, and then you still have Andrews.
So, by the way, Bateman now becomes the highest drafted Minnesota Gopher wide receiver. The previous one, you want to do a little fun trivia here? Who was the last one that was taken? The highest Gophers receiver taken? It's a throwback name.
Ron Johnson. I'm just playing.
No, Eric Decker. Third round, 87th overall back in 2010. Is this sort of signal to you that this is the Ravens recognizing that while they need offensive line help, Lamar Jackson can stick and move, they've got to get him some receiving weapons to really see what they've got with him?
Well, he has no excuses. I mean, Sammy Watkins, if he can stay healthy, you got, Andrews, you have now Hollywood Brown that can play in the slot. And now and Greg Roman can be creative with the packages in which they play. They change personnel more than anybody, but now they have enough weapons where you have good, huge catch radius.
Bart, that's a great point. I think this is a 2 for a price of 1L from a standpoint of now you have Watkins and Bateman on the outside. Hollywood Brown can't win outside. That's not his game.
Yeah,
he's too small. So this could be a way that hopefully they get more out of their former first-round pick from Oklahoma.
Bateman's the first Minnesota Gopher taken in the first round since 2006. The Saints are now specifically on the clock. We will get to the offensive line conversation because there's still a ton of talent here when you take a look at the line on the back end of this first round. When you look at your best available player, Mike, who's the guy? Are we still stuck here and kind of scratching our head on Ojulari out of Georgia and why he's still available?
Yeah, there's a couple of players. Ojulari's one for sure, but there's an interesting player, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
I like him.
From Notre Dame. Now, Bart should not like him because he's tiny. Bart likes him big.
Well, he's a safety. He's like a tweener.
So if we go back a year ago, Jeremy Chin was a second-round pick of the Carolina Panthers.
SIU.
Yeah, who really had a great year. You have to have a real vision because Owusu-Koramoah is not a pass rusher. He's too short and his arms are way too short.
Is he like a rover?
He is a rover. So you need a real vision for him. But he's
Jamal Adams.
Yeah, he's a great player that could run and hit. So he's one. Trevon Morey is a really productive safety for TCU. He's a plug-and-play player for 10 years like a Marcus Williams with the Saints. Elijah Moore is a really good receiver from Ole Miss. He's a guy that I think could come in a lot like A.J. Brown did from Ole Miss and be a productive player from day one. And then a player that Bart's talked about quite a bit, Tavon Jenkins from Oklahoma State, probably a notch below Christian Darrisaw, but somebody that has starting ability from day one.
I'm sorry. Are we just forgetting the fact that literally they have no receivers in New Orleans? I mean, they've got Michael Thomas. Emmanuel Sanders is gone, so we're not going to go receiver here. You don't think that's a need? You're trying to figure out what you've got in Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. Who are they going to throw to? Because even their second guy, their number 2 card, Traquan Smith, but he's never actually eclipsed 450 yards, and Michael Thomas is always hurt. You don't think you'd have someone?
But you got Rondell Moore. You got a lot of depth still left at receiver. Still a lot of good receivers. They need to get somebody to play next to DeMario Davis. They need somebody because he's starting to get a little longer in the tooth there. They need somebody at the second level. They tried Kiko Alonso last year. They got to get somebody. I mean, not Kiko Alonso. They brought the other kid from San Fran in there for a second as well, Alexander, right? Or am I tripping?
I just
Quan
love
Alexander. Yes.
Yeah, Quan
right.
Alexander. So they need to get another linebacker next to DeMario Davis.
I just love that you're talking about the wide receiver depth while earlier tonight we were trying to sell to you the wide receiver depth of this draft when you wanted Jamar Chase at 5.
But they already have a 1.
Thanks,
they already
Kevin.
have a 1.
Thank you, Kevin.
They already have a 1. They got Michael Thomas. They got a 1.
And Bart's standard for quarterback is dependent. If we're talking about Matt Stafford, getting a team to the playoffs is not relevant. If we're talking about another you can't get the team to the playoffs. So what is the standard?
Listen, don't let the
what is the
good argument.
There's a pick with the Saints.
The New Orleans Saints select Peyton Turner, defensive end, Houston.
Okay.
What?
All right, as the resident Saints fan here, this reminds me of Marcus Davenport,
who they just picked up his 5th-year option. What the hell are they doing?
Mike?
Yeah, so Peyton,
help.
Peyton Turner, look, he's a long-limbed guy, 270 pounds. He has really long arms, 35-inch arms. He played 3 technique as well as defensive end. He came into school. He was only 217 pounds, went up to 270. He is a long-limbed guy. Now, they have Cam Jordan. We just talked about the exercise the 5th year on Davenport. They moved up for Davenport. This one's a little bit of a surprise. I guess
a little?
Yeah,
a little bit.
I guess their
I
vision
had him on
is
pace too.
I know, but if you go back to the Senior Bowl practices, he played 3 technique, so they must like his versatility to slide him inside.
There goes the
Cam
Senior
Jordan
Bowl.
on one side and Davenport on the other. So given the other needs, as you alluded to with receiver, this was a guy that I thought you could probably find a little bit further down in the draft.
Okay, so while this is surprising, there's never tons of intrigue when it comes to who's going at the bottom of the draft and who's going at this position. But there was tons of intrigue around Mac Jones, the fall of Mac Jones, projected before to go to the Niners. He does not. They instead take Trey Lance. He falls all the way to 15 to the New England Patriots. At the time he was asked about it, he mouthed, "This is where I wanted to be anyway." He caught up with Susie Colbert after he was drafted. Here's what he said.
What was the roller coaster like tonight?
I mean, it was fine. I mean, you just sit around and wait, and I'm just so blessed to be a part of a great organization, like I said. And, it's not really where you get picked. It's what you do with the opportunity, and that's what Coach Saban told me. So I'm just going to follow that.
Dream fulfilled. When you were 7-year-olds, you actually illustrated a photo and wrote, "When I grow up." And it's this moment in the NFL. What does it mean to fulfill a dream that big?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, along the way, a lot of people are going to tell you can't do something. You just got to keep pushing. But, we're just getting started. So I'm looking forward to playing in the NFL, and it's going to be awesome. So I'm blessed.
Well, nice approach there. Mac Jones sliding, of course, projected in mocks for weeks that he would go number 3 to the Niners, and then he slides to 15 right into the laps of Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick and the Patriots. You heard the chime there. That is the Packers at 29. It's been a quiet night after a very loud afternoon surrounding the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. And, of course, the storyline is he's not happy. He does not plan on returning. He's told some sources in Green Bay, according to Adam Schefter. The Packers are not budging at the moment. So we will see what they do at 29. And Mike T, we took the approach here in this conversation. If you hear this news and you want to acquire Aaron Rodgers, what would you do? Now I want to play the other role. You are the GM of Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't want to come back. What do you do at 29?
Well, you kind of made that decision a year ago, Kevin, where you traded up a 4th-round pick to get Jordan Love. So if you were convicted about Jordan Love a year ago, you have to see that through. With that said, I would go see Aaron Rodgers repeatedly. I would bring my yellow pad. I would keep asking questions, elicit what it would take to make you satisfied economically as well as non-economically. And I would work really hard to find a solution because, look, he's an all-time great. He's going to the Hall of Fame. And, look, none of us are perfect, but one of the roles you have as a leader is you need to anticipate what's going to happen next. And if you're thinking about trading up for Jordan Love, you need to sit down with Aaron Rodgers before last year's draft and say, hey, we like you, we believe in you, but we have a responsibility to the organization. This may happen, and out of respect for you, I want you to hear it from me first. You may not like it, but you would like it a lot less if you didn't hear it from me.
Do you think they can curry a little bit of favor maybe with Aaron Rodgers by drafting a receiver here, something they've never done in his tenure there, take a receiver in the first round, or are you going full sail somewhere else?
He's in the barn.
Okay.
I think, they need a receiver. I think that was the difference in the game. Lazard didn't make the catch, and, in Tampa they made the catch, right? So, you can get him one, but I don't know if he's going to be there. He's a strong-minded guy. The same thing make you laugh, make you cry.
Well, we're certainly going to find out as Commissioner Goodell makes his way to the podium for the Packers pick at 29. Let's listen in.
With the 29th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Eric Stokes, defensive back, Georgia.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Here's another cornerback of Georgia, played opposite Tyson Campbell and did a really good job. Here's a kid, 6'1", 194 pounds with long arms, tremendous athletic ability, 38.5 vertical, ran 4.25 at his pro day. I think when you look at Eric Stokes, he tested a little better than I thought than he played at Georgia. I didn't see that dynamic talent on display each week, but when you run that well and you're as consistent and as reliable in coverage as he was, you're going to get some NFL attention.
How about that, Mikey T? Jair Alexander on one side, and now you've got Eric Stokes on the other. What do you make of this pick by the Packers?
I'm going to have a completely shameless plug. Mike Tannenbaum's mock draft had Eric Stokes in the first round 3 weeks ago, and I was eviscerated by Mel Kiper and Todd McShay as a rookie mocker. And, man, did they just take me out to the woodshed and said, Eric Stokes in the first round.
Do your victory lap.
Yeah, so that was my own shameless plug. So, look.
Why'd you have him going that high?
Because for a lot of the reasons Mel ironically just said, and this is a big influence in my career, was from Rex Ryan, which is when you can play man-to-man, you can get off the field on third down. He is twitchy. He is fast. He is quick. I thought he played to his time speed. Kevin King, we saw gave up a home run against the Buccaneers in the championship game.
They picked on him the entire game.
So, Kevin, to answer L's question right there, you have Jari Alexander one side. They re-signed Kevin King on a short-term deal. Eric Stokes has high-end ability. He needs to play a little bit more consistent, but you do see flashes of his time speed as his play speed. I think that's hard to find at the corner position, and this is why I mocked him to where he is.
Yeah, when that game was going on in the NFC title game, you just saw Brady licking his chops with King. I felt so bad for King late in the second quarter, and they're going in the half, and I'm like, that guy is going to be the loneliest person inside the locker room. You mentioned the high ceiling for Eric Stokes. The guy that has the highest ceiling when it comes to conversations is Trey Lance, now a 49er. He talked to our Susie Colbert.
Trey, what were those emotions like when you got that call?
Really emotional. Just like I said, just super thankful for everyone in the green room with me and everyone that helped me get to this point. Just very blessed to be here.
You know, from the time that the Niners made that massive trade up to number 3, I think a lot of people talked about Mac Jones. What happened over the last couple of weeks? What were the connections like and the interactions?
I mean, it was super exciting. Like I said, I'm super excited to be part of the organization. For me and Mac, we're good friends now. We got to know each other, and I'm super excited for him. And he's going to end up right where he's supposed to be.
What did you feel like the conversations were like with Kyle Shanahan?
It was awesome to get to know Coach Shanahan a little bit. Didn't get to know him too much, but he's an awesome dude, and obviously what he's done on the field speaks for itself.
I'm sure our next conversation will be with Jimmy Garoppolo. What would you like him to know right now?
I'm excited to learn from him. Everything he's done, he's a mentor for me, and I'm super excited to get there and learn as much as I possibly can.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I understand he has to say all of the right things. You were just listening to Trey Lance, who was surprising to some, maybe not to as many people over the last few days, because it seemed like we were ebbing that way, but he was drafted by the Niners at the number 3 pick. I mean, what are you learning from Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, you can learn a lot from him. I mean, look.
Not
like
to
what?
be hurt.
Yeah.
Don't do what I do.
Look, there's a lot to like about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a winning NFL quarterback when he plays. And I got to tell you, when you talk to people around the league, people were blown away by Trey Lance when they got to know him because, look, there's so much. Justin Fields, when you're playing at Ohio State or Mac Jones at Alabama, you're playing on the national spotlight. You're dealing with the national media. There was a lot of unknowns about Trey Lance from a character standpoint, a work ethic standpoint. I think it's a little bit like Josh Allen where no one really knows what's going on at Wyoming. So there were so many people that were raving about his intangibles. So, again, I was surprised. I was in the Mac Jones camp, obviously. But I could see how John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan would fall in love with the guy the more time they spent with him.
We were just talking a couple of years ago, Bart, about a quarterback being drafted in the first round that didn't have tons of experience, and how would that play out? And his name is Mitch Trubisky. So how do we know that this is not Mitch Trubisky part 2?
You don't know. Listen, we know that 42% of the quarterbacks, at least out of the 5 that's going to go in the first round, at least 3 of them are going to, or 2 of them may not work out.
Sure.
All you got to do is look at 2018. The jury's still out on Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen somewhere on the island somewhere. Where's Waldo? We're trying to find him on a milk carton somewhere. You think about, it's about the right fit. It's about, Kyle Shanahan being able to develop him. All the raw tools are there, but the football acumen, them saying that he's the smartest quarterback, meaning that he can process information that allows him to play fast. That's going to give him an advantage that he doesn't have to play immediately as well.
Mitchell Trubisky now a backup to Josh Allen of the Bills, and the Bills pick is in. We will get to the commissioner in a moment. We're 3 picks away from the end of the first round, and you had mentioned at the start of the show you thought a 6th quarterback would go. And I'm sitting there thinking maybe the Buccaneers at 32 make a decision with Davis Mills. We will see how that plays. Or it could be Kellen Mond, but make a decision for their future as Tom Brady will be 44 when the season starts.
Yeah, and we saw Baltimore run that play a couple of years ago. Ozzie do some trades up, take Lamar Jackson, league MVP, signs 5-year deal. So that makes a lot of sense to me. The Bills right now, they need they need a pass rusher.
Yep.
Azeez Ojulari, to me, makes a lot of sense. I thought he could get as high as 11 or 12. This would be great value to get him at 30. And when you think about Buffalo, it's another, to me, what they've done a great job of is fill needs. Josh Allen needs a frontline receiver. They give up a 1. They get Stephon Diggs. If this is Azeez Ojulari, they're desperate for a young pass rusher. This lines up really well for them.
Brandon Beane, the GM's done a great job. Here's the commissioner.
With the 30th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Gregory Rousseau, defensive end, Miami.
Mel Kiper's first draft analysis.
Topped out in 2020, but 15.5 sacks in 2019. Got everybody's attention. Some were coverage sacks, though. But he's 6'6.5", 266 pounds with huge hands and long arms. When he's coached up, you hope he can maximize that ability. I also liked in 2019 how disruptive he was when he was kicked inside the defensive tackle.
All right, so the pick is Gregory Rousseau, the defensive end from Miami. Coming up next, we will get reaction to the Bills pick. And the final two picks of the first round are coming, the Ravens and those Super Bowl champion Bucks. You are listening to the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, presented by Sherwin-Williams.
Keith, thank you so much. Welcome to our studio as we continue our first round coverage of the NFL Draft here on ESPN Radio. Kevin Negandhi alongside L. Duncan, and joining us in the studio, Bart Scott, Mike Tannenbaum, and Ian Fitzsimmons. A little quick recap as the Ravens are on the clock with the Chiefs pick, acquired in the Orlando Brown trade at 31. The last 5 picks, Greg Newsome out of Northwestern going to the Browns at 26. Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota going to the Ravens at 27. Peyton Turner, a shocker there, out of Houston going to the Saints. Eric Stokes out of Georgia going to the Packers. And then Gregory Rousseau out of the U going to the Bills. Fitz, let's start with you. And you talked to Manny Diaz earlier today.
Yeah, and when I asked him about Rousseau, he said, you could tell in his tone of voice that he really wanted to see one more year with him. He could have used some seasoning. But when I asked him if there's a comparison with Rousseau, he said, when I was recruiting Manny Lawson out of high school, that's who Rousseau reminded me of. And Manny Lawson had a heck of a career at NC State and a good career in the National Football League. But just listening to his tone, he really thinks that Rousseau could have used one more year of seasoning before going to the league. But that's a pretty high praise when you talk about Manny Lawson. That's who he reminded him of when he recruited him out of high school.
Is that the benefit, Mike Tannenbaum, of sort of not really needing anything, right? We're sort of like parsing words if we're saying the Bills are in need of much, because they're not, right? So is that the benefit of a Bills squad that can say, this is sort of a low-stakes pick for us. If he needs a little time to develop, that's okay because we're pretty yoked on defense regardless?
Yeah, that's a position of strength, and you want to fill as many needs as you can before the draft, and they've done a pretty good job. I thought pass rusher was an area they could go. Jerry Hughes' age, and he's a declining player. I think what's interesting, too, L, is Rousseau and Jalen Phillips, a lot of discrepancy around the league in terms of who is better going into the year. No one really even had heard of Phillips, and there was a lot of buzz about Rousseau. I think the thing about Rousseau that I found particularly interesting is he's an outside pass rusher that you could see lining up at nose tackle, and then he's dropping in zone coverage. He's a great athlete. Not like a good he's a great athlete.
They moved him around a lot, and he was better with line stunts, TEs, and games. You saw him being able to be effective there, and sometimes they did use him inside. I wish he could learn, like most tall guys, like we used to have Rapati, who was like 6'9", right? Yep. He wasn't great at using his hands. He didn't have counter moves, right? So if the first move isn't there, it just turns to a bull rush and gets stymied, and they're looking to bat the ball down. I thought sometimes he kind of chopped his feet. We need to have a little bit more violent hands.
He's a legit 6'7".
Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting, guys, is this is one where you could say an opt-out may have hurt him, that Peyton Turner goes before him, that Jalen Phillips goes before him, because going to the year, I don't think any of us would have thought it would have been in that order.
Yeah.
How much of a freak he was back in the day. He played wide receiver and safety in high school, and he got half his sacks in 2019 just on natural ability, not on any type of floor.
A lot of line stunts. He was like beating guys inside a lot, things that he'll have to clean up and get more fundamentally sound. But what better place to go than go to a team like Buffalo, who has great teachers. You have Frazier out there that's going to teach him how to play the position, and he doesn't have to be rushed. He can start with the pass rushing package. They give him a package and bring him along slowly.
All right, so you are listening to round one of the NFL Draft as it's coming to its conclusion very soon. The Ravens are picking at 31, and their pick is in right now. This is their second pick in, 5 picks? They picked at 27 as well. They picked up the receiver out of Minnesota, Rashad Bateman. So now that they've addressed giving Lamar Jackson some weapons, where's the biggest need for the Ravens? Where can they answer that here?
Or it has to be offensive line. They just traded
pass rusher.
Yeah, but they just traded Orlando Brown, and your future is Lamar Jackson. So couple of really good tackles to me that are sitting right there. It'll be interesting to see.
Sevin Jenkins.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big, heavy-handed guy.
And I like Sam Cosmi from Texas. Liam Aikenberg from Notre Dame is another one. So,
but Baltimore loves our defense.
Jalen Mayfield too.
Jalen Mayfield from Michigan, absolutely.
We love our defense in Baltimore. And listen, you think about all the great pass rush. I know they're going to bring in Justin Houston, but they always have a nice young one sitting there. You remember they go from Elvis Dumerville, they bring an old retread in, but they always got somebody in the pipeline. You think about Zadarius Smith, from Terrell Suggs, Zadarius Smith, and they just continue to
Judon.
Mac Judon. McPhee was good for a while. He's still there. They re-signed him. I'm telling you, they can't pass up pass rush. They can't pass. It's like one of those things you have to have, just like Pittsburgh. They always have to have a young guy in the pipeline over there.
We're a few seconds away from the commissioner making the pick. He's been hugging the crowd, and everybody's celebrating the return in public on the big stage. Ravens on the clock.
Get them.
He's enjoying the music. He's having a good time in Cleveland.
So is Michael Irvin.
Yeah,
Michael always having a good time. He was just Tebowing.
With the 31st pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Jason Owe, linebacker, Penn State.
No Kuiper's first draft analysis.
Here's a kid who is a freakish talent. You talk about a kid almost 6'5", 260 with incredible arm length, ran 4.39 vertical, near 40 inches at his pro day, 21 reps, but he didn't have a sack. Here's a pass rusher without a sack in 2020, had 5.5 sacks in 2019. You want him in space on his feet, not as a down defensive end the way he was utilized. I think he was utilized in a different way at Penn State than would have maximized his ability. You hope now that once he's coached up and learned some more pass rush moves, he can take advantage of all that God-given talent that he has.
They needed someone that could get to the quarterback. 3 of Baltimore's top 6 sacks producers last year left in free agency. What do you make of Jason Owe going here?
This is not a typical Raven pick, and let me tell you why. He had no sacks last year, 0. He tested off the charts, which I'm very skeptical of because it was a pro day, not the combine. And Baltimore does a great job of tremendous football character, tremendous production. We could talk about all their ones over the years. This is a really interesting player because he has great sort of measurables, long arms, good get-off, but no sacks. As a pass rusher, that's a concern. I'm a little surprised that he went in the first round.
First defensive end or outside linebacker that was selected in the first round in the last 25 years that didn't register a single sack in his final season.
Baltimore doesn't care about stuff like that.
4.39 speed, so much potential. He wanted to play in the NBA as a kid. And when you're 6'5", and you have 4.39 speed, you're 257. My goodness, he's a specimen.
Are you really buying that 4.39? Because I'm not.
I'm not either.
Well, okay, 4.5.
All I know is this. It's the old Gil Brandt story when it comes to, I don't know if you guys remember this one, where if you set a marble on that field at Happy Valley, would it roll?
Yep. Ohio State, too. Ohio State, LeVar Arrington back in the day, all those guys. But I tell you what, this is what Baltimore doesn't care. Because they're going to put them into his pipeline. They're going to take that raw clay and they're going to mold it, right? He's going to learn from McPhee. He's going to understand how we do things in Baltimore, what Baltimore is all about, and they're going to coach him up. They take guys like that. Whoever heard of Zadarius Smith? Nobody. Right?
Whoever heard of Bart Scott?
Exactly. They found me somewhere in a cornfield. You know what I'm saying?
But again, when you have to look at
Adelius Thomas.
Right, but when you have to look at the strategy in this draft, I just thought there was too many tackles there.
With the 32nd pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Joe Tryon, linebacker, Washington.
Todd McShay's first draft analysis.
Joe Tryon had a breakout season as a redshirt sophomore in 2019. He had 12 and a half tackles for loss and 8 sacks. Now, he opted out this past season, but you just go back to 2019 and study the tape. He has a quick first step. He attacks tackles with great leverage, and he has strong hands and the ability to get off of blocks. So versus the run and as a pass rusher, this guy brings everything that you're looking for. I think he could be a defensive end, a left defensive end, or a 3-4 outside linebacker at the next level.
So what does a reigning Super Bowl champion team need that returned 22 freaking starters, just some depth. So we will get the reaction from our crew here in just a minute to the Tampa Bay Bucks going there. We now pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio.
Can you guys...
Okay, so Joe Tryon is their guy, linebacker from Washington. Your thoughts?
Yeah, in talking to a couple of coaches who spent time with him, he had an interesting situation. He opted out. He wanted to play this year. He, in a very earnest way, got caught up with an agent during when it looked like the Pac-12 wasn't going to play. He came across, coaches said, very sincere, very earnest, very authentic. So no issues on the character. Really a little bit of a hybrid rusher, kind of moved around a little bit. And when you think about Todd Bowles, going back to what they did in the Super Bowl and the pressure that they were able to bring, he fits that mold. And Pierre Paul's not getting any younger. Yeah. This is a guy that's a really good pass rusher. I would have taken him over Jason Oweh because of his production when he did play. There were concerns about his knee. I think that's one of the reasons why he was still available at 32.
I mean, you think about JPP, right? You got Shaq Barrett, you paid him this money, and sometimes, you bring everybody back this year, but at some point you got to pay other people. OJ the Juice Man, is still there. You got to be able to replace this talent. It's all about the redistribution of money, right? So if you can get a cheap player, JPP, I believe he's 32 years old. You have to start, planning for the future.
Guys, I'm blown away that Ojulari's still on the board through day one, and there's Moehrig from
not one safety taken
from TCU. And this was a draft that the safety play wasn't at the top of the conversation, right? But then for them to go 32 picks and not see a safety taken, and then Barmore's still available. We're going to talk all about that as we wrap up day one of the NFL Draft in a matter of moments. This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio, presented by Sherwin-Williams.
This is Derek's O'Reilly Auto Parts story. After the third time jump-starting my car, I finally realized my battery was dying. So I stopped by O'Reilly to have it checked. They tested it right there in the parking lot. It was bad, real bad. But they helped me find the right battery for my car and even installed it for free. Now my car starts like new.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Attention Social Security and SSI recipients. If you did not receive an economic impact payment for your eligible spouse or dependents, you may need to file a 2020 tax return with the IRS and claim the recovery rebate credit. Go to ssa.gov/EIP to see if you need to file a tax return and if eligible for other refundable tax credits, like the child tax credit. That's ssa.gov/EIP. Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Body Armor Light isn't just a sports drink. It's more than a sports drink. With no artificial sweeteners, no sugar added, and only 20 calories per 16-ounce bottle, Body Armor Light is changing the game when it comes to hydration. Body Armor Light has potassium-packed electrolytes, coconut water, antioxidants, and vitamins, making it the perfect choice for your next workout. Hydrate like Naomi Osaka, Dustin Johnson, and Mookie Betts with Body Armor Light. More than a sports drink. Shop now at Amazon.com.
Hey everyone, this is Zach Lowe. Check out my podcast, The Lowe Post, where I talk to people in and around the NBA about everything going on in the basketball world.
This week's difference maker is Nikola Jokic, the most watchable, telegenic player in the NBA.
Players, trends, under-the-radar teams, everything.
It's a home run trade for them, considering the circumstances, considering that they were roped into this at the last minute.
Listen and subscribe to The Lowe Post wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're an attorney who struggles with the balance of managing your practice and practicing law, consider Lexicon as your #1 pick. From client intake to billing and all that comes in between, Lexicon doesn't miss a thing. Our comprehensive solution combines best-in-class software and services to take care of your firm's most critical challenges, automating many of the tasks that take time out of your day. It's all about giving you more of your billable hours back. And who doesn't love more revenue? No more searching for practice management that works. Lexicon marks the spot. Visit lexiconservices.com to learn what Lexicon can do for you.
This is the 2021 NFL Draft on ESPN Radio and on the ESPN app.
It certainly is, and tonight's game flow from round one is brought to you by Progressive's Home Insurance. Get your quote at progressive.com today. Getting ready to sign off, Elle Duncan, Kevin Negandhi, Mike Tannenbaum, Bart Scott, Ian Fitzsimmons. Before we get out of here, I want to get your biggest takeaway from day one, round one. All the picks are complete. Mikey T, what you got?
It's not where you start, it's where you finish. And Justin Fields, I think he got a little beaten up in the pre-draft process, and now, hey, he's going to Chicago to save a franchise. He's got a good offensive coach in Matt Nagy. They got some pieces there. Offensive line's not ideal, but Justin Fields is someone that I'm really rooting for. I thought he got a little bit of a bad deal in Georgia, played really well last 2 years, and, hey, maybe it'll be a great ending where Justin Fields and Matt Nagy are two guys that can lead a team in the NFC North.
Oh, man, I mean, listen, he definitely bought them time. You always get a rookie quarterback, you get a little bit more time. But, I'll go the other way then. The Patriots, patient. Bill Belichick probably fed the dog. What's his name? Nike check or whatever his name is? Nike, Nike sitting there cool, calm, and collect. And, they just were patient. And the player that I believe that they wanted all along fell right to him.
Only the Patriots would not have to give anything away to get the quarterback of their future. It's so New England and Belichick. But just being here and having coaches and scouts text me throughout the draft, two of my favorites that I got. One from my little brother who was at Vanderbilt last year as a special teams coordinator. When J.C. Horn went off the board, he said, J.C. Horn is so legit, he didn't have to play against us. Now, considering it's Vandy, that's one thing, right?
Sure.
And the other one I got is from one scout. This was for you, Elle. If Peyton Manning is spending time with Drew Lock in the offseason, he is a talent. Tell Elle Peyton Manning isn't wasting his time with Drew Lock. Yeah, there you go.
We got big double, triple yawn. Oh, that means something. Well, which Peyton Manning is it? Is it the Peyton Manning?
He's the one that suggested Adam Gase to the Jets.
Right. Is it the 2013 Peyton Manning?
It's
or
the guy who's going to Canton. That Peyton Manning.
All right. Well, that's all well and good, but I still am praying that Aaron Rodgers is walking through that door. I'm going Rick Pitino game on them. That's what I am hoping for. That's my biggest takeaway.
That's your biggest takeaway?
If you don't go get Aaron Rodgers after you drafted a cornerback, then I'm going to come see you, George Payton.
Okay, my biggest takeaway is actually I'm really happy with what Howie Roseman did, and that is a surprise. I didn't think I was going to say that. But to me, it's what the Cowboys did, dropping down and picking up an asset and still getting Micah Parsons. The Giants dropping down, shocking all of us to getting Kadarius Toney, but picking up a first rounder next year in that trade with the Bears. NFL Draft on ESPN Radio has been presented by Sherwin-Williams. From pregame prep to postgame cleanup, Sherwin-Williams has everything you need to tackle your next project. I want to remind our audience, too, we are back in just a few hours. Elle and I and Mike T is going to join us as well.
And Bart Scott.
And Bart, you're joining us
on Stay Up. On Stay Up.
Right.
On Get Up.
I'll be looking at the back of my eyelids. You guys have fun.
Yeah, whatever, Ian.
And we will be back tomorrow night. And just to give you an idea, too, just at least the first 5 picks in round number 2. Jaguars, they pick first, then the Jets, the Falcons, the Dolphins, and then the Eagles.